Pokemon Horizons Rising Again was the 7th and final arc of the Laquium portion of the story in Pokemon Horizons. It was the culmination of 3 years worth of story, including a time skip that had never been done before in the anime. There are a handful of new focuses for this arc. After ending the previous arc with our heroes struggling against the 6 hero Pokemon, they decide they need to get better, and they do so by going to places like Blueberry Academy, learning how to battle all over again. It's also the arc that is the conclusion for most of the protagonist's main Pokemon. And on top of that, we learn more about Alt as a character, we learn more about the Explorers as a character, and Freed returns in this arc. We also see the focus shift back to Mega Evolution for a majority of this arc. To me, a lot of it worked, a lot of it didn't. This arc was a mixed bag. By the end of it, it comes to a satisfying enough conclusion, but there's still things that I wish would have been done differently. Regardless, sit back, get a popcorn, and enjoy my review of every single episode of Pokemon Horizons from the Rising Again arc. Episode 115 of Pokemon Horizons, titled Terra Shine, Blueberry Academy, just dropped. This new arc begins with a battle between An and Lacey of Blueberry Academy. The main thing here is just showing us how proficient Lacey is in double battles, while introducing the concept that Blueberry Academy teaches double battles. We don't get a conclusion to this battle here, but we do see Nemona is also here, and learn that Cyrano saw Anne's talent at Narana Academy and invited her here. The Rising Bull Tacklers then arrive at Blueberry Academy. They're greeted by Cyrano, and while he takes them to the reception desk, he talks about the schools and its workings. If you've ever played the Scarlet and Violet DLC, then you know all this. When he gets to the front, Briar, the person who invited our heroes, isn't here. Turns out, she's too busy working in the terrarium core, so she says she will see our heroes tomorrow. That's when Lacey arrives, explaining how the school works underwater and everything in between. The dialogue here is pretty close to the DLC dialogue that you get in the actual game, but eventually she does agree to show our heroes around the terrarium. She explains to them how the terrarium works in the different biomes, and she then takes our heroes to the center where Anne and Nemona are waiting for them. They all greet each other before Nemona challenges Roy to a battle, and he agrees. And in typical Blueberry Academy fashion, this battle is a 2-on-2. It's Nemona's Palmont and a Decidueye that she captured and trained as a Rowlet from scratch from her time in Blueberry Academy. Just shows how talented she is. Roy uses his Lucario and Crocalor. The battle is a really solid battle with some back and forths at the beginning, but Nemona really shows her strength when she starts combining her moves. She stops Lucario from attacking using Spirit Shackle and KOs it using Double Shock from her Palmont. And despite showing the determination that Roy shows here, Nemona does the same thing again as she stops Crocalor from moving with Spirit Shackle from Decidueye, while her Palmont charges her Focus Punch. Even though Crocalor eventually manages to break through Spirit Shackle, it's too late, as Palmont's Focus Punch is fully charged and it KOs Crocalor, which means the winner is Nemona. Afterwards, Nemona has to leave to head back to Narana before she can battle Alt, which is a running gag for this series, but our heroes are amped to be able to train in an environment like the terrarium. And Howard tells them that maybe they should get help from the older students, specifically Lacey, because she's a Blueberry Elite 4 member. Our heroes plead for her help. That's pretty funny. That's when Drayton arrives, and our heroes find out that he is also a Blueberry Academy Elite 4 member, and they beg for his help. The episode ends with our heroes seemingly training in the terrarium wilds with wild Pokemon to resolve to get stronger. A fun introductory episode. This is one of those episodes where a lot of dialogue is lifted directly from the games, so if you've played the Scarlet and Violet DLC, then you know all the major explanations for what the terrarium is and how it works, so it's nothing new there. As for the battle between Roy and Nemona, it was fine. After seeing the incredible art and animation we got for the Mega Evolution special, it is disappointing to go back to the average battle art here. But in this case, I do like the overall message of the battle, that while Roy has determination, he still isn't as skilled in battle as Nemona. And their 3 battles, that's kind of bore out, as the only battle that Roy has won has seemingly been due to the major power boost that Mega Evolution provided. And in this case, we see that Nemona's learned from that as she targets Lucario first. So while Roy is the strongest of the Rising Voltaclers and is the primary battler for the group, he still has a long way to go. As for the future, I am interested to see where the Blueberry Academy arc goes. Our heroes are only training with 2 of the Elite 4 members, and then deal with whatever Briar tells them. But this episode doesn't really give us a hint as to what that could be. The new opening, on the other hand, there's one frame here that they showed that's causing a lot of discussion among the community. This is clearly Freed's sleeve. So why is he holding up a Laquium sphere? There was a teaser at the end of the last arc that this arc is when he's most likely returning. But doing what? Is he allied with the villains now? Or is he pretending to maybe ally with the villains to get information? There are so many questions that are on this table, and I'm curiously looking forward to see how they will all be answered. Episode 116 of Pokemon Horizons titled The Training Begins, Terrarium Dome just dropped. This episode continues from the last one as our heroes want to talk to Briar and also get trained by the 2 Elite Four members of Blueberry Academy. I wish the other 2 were also involved, but oh well. Our heroes start off by talking to other people, both in and out of Blueberry Academy, to make plans and just catch up. Liko talks to Anne, Dot is talking to Penny, and Roy's catching up with Murdoch before they all get together in the cafeteria to eat. Afterwards, they head to where they're supposed to meet Briar. They're waiting on Briar's assistant to pick them up when we see Carmine arrive. They don't recognize her at first, which is pretty funny, but we do find out that she is the assistant to Briar, just like in the game. Our heroes then let Briar know about their experiences with the strong spheres, the super strong spheres, and Tarapago's ability to deal with it all. Briar says that she'll continue to research, but that'll take a while, so she asks our heroes what they'll do in the meantime. They tell her that they're going to be trained by Lacey and Drayton. Carmine isn't surprised Lacey's helping, but she's skeptical about Drayton, and that skepticism seems to be pretty well founded, as our heroes gather in the center of the terrarium to train, and while Lacey's there, Drayton isn't. So for now, Lacey gives our heroes some locations they can use to train, and our heroes head off. Alt especially even leaves before the conversation ends. So our heroes go to the different biomes to train. Dot is in the coastal biome when she comes across a Crabrawler, and later we see her helping Gimmighoul collect some coins when Penny arrives. Penny is also collecting coins from Gimmighoul when she first arrives, meaning Gimmighoul got it to do it for her, which is pretty funny when you realize, how did it even find Penny? Liko's in the Savannah biome battling against a Pyroar who is in Pride Rock in the games with her Charcadet and Meowscarada. As she's battling, Anne shows up. We see later she has her Charcadet battling Anne Samurott, helping it train to get stronger. Then, Carmine arrives, telling her that Briar's looking for them and Tarapago's. So Liko sends out a message to the rest of the group to let them know. That's where we learn that the Rising Voltaclers being pariahs has spread even to Blueberry Academy, as Carmine knows about them. However, it seems Briar has told her the full story, so she tells Liko not to worry about what others think about you when they don't know the full story, which is potentially referencing the teal mask already happening. I've already said this prior, but I'm pretty sure Horizons takes place after the events of the game, and this feels like more evidence to me. Alt is in the polar biome. He has to be saved by Lacey's word when he tries to sneak up on an Overquill who's sleeping, only to be attacked regardless. She tells him he needs to be more aware of the surrounding, but despite her advice, he doesn't care and runs away. Then later he finds Chargestone Cavern, where once again, he takes on a head-on approach to battle against the Galvantula, despite being hit by traps it set over and over again. When Lacey finds him, she sees that his Sableye is covered in electricity, and he says that all it matters is that he won before running away again, and Lacey is annoyed by this. And Roy trains in the Canyon biome. While doing so, Roy comes across Drayton. He asks him to train him, and Drayton says that his motto is to keep it chill, so he'll have his phone train him. Drayton then heads to the clubhouse and has Roy, through his phone, go around doing various tasks for him, like watching Pokemon, making sandwiches, taking pictures, gathering berries, the latter of which is when Lacey comes across Roy, and when she finds out what Drayton's making him do, she is upset. Turns out, Drayton's just making Roy do his Blueberry quest to get free Blueberry points. When he's confronted by Lacey and later Serrano, he finds out that Roy actually trained with Hassel, who's friends with Drayton, Drayton's grandfather. So, hearing this, Drayton decides that he's going to battle against Roy. The battle between the two is a double battle, and as Drayton points out from the beginning, Roy's uptight before the battle even starts. The battle is between Drayton's Kingdra and Archaludon versus Roy's Crocalor and Kilowattrel, and it's a pretty good battle here, showing off that Roy does have some double battle experience. He manages to use Kingdra's Hurricane against Drayton to charge Kilowattrel's wings before attacking with Electro Ball. He then has Crocalor use Disarming Voice against Drayton's Dragon types before Drayton's Archaludon counters with Snarl. Roy then has his Pokemon take to the air for some more teamwork, as he's able to dodge both Hydro Pump from Kingdra and Draco Meteor from Archaludon due to his experience with Rayquaza. He even counters the Draco Meteor plus Hurricane combo by using a combination of sound moves, Uproar and Disarming Voice. However, this is when Drayton turns it up and has Kingdra use Rain Dance, and instantly the tenor of the battle changes. Rain Dance allows Electroshot from Archaludon to be used with no charge time, KOing Kilowattrel, and the Rain Dance also freezes the ground, which had a lot of snow from it prior, causing it to get slick, preventing Crocalor from using Stomping Tantrum. Drayton's able to end the match using Wave Crash from Kingdra. After the battle, Drayton reiterates his motto to Roy, telling him that being too uptight during the heat of battle always isn't the best thing, that it's better to chill, and Roy thinks about that. Meanwhile, Lacey once again finds Alt, who's at the coastal biome now, and the episode ends with her menacingly telling him that they're going to study since he wants to get stronger. This is a fun episode. This episode feels like an older school Horizons episode, which I really enjoyed. Our heroes training to get stronger, and while the main focus was Roy and Alt, it does make for a fun episode to see everyone also getting involved. I talked about this earlier, but I do wonder why they only have 2 Elite Four members involved in this arc. It feels like it would have been perfect to have all 4, with each of our heroes being trained by one of the Elite Four members. That would basically be similar to what happened in the Terrestrial arc, which was great, except with the Blueberry Academy characters who were pretty fun in the games they're in. Maybe they couldn't find voice acting in time, or just a budget thing, or they just don't want to add new characters to the anime, but I really wish they would have considered it because it would have felt perfect here. I will say that one of my early observations that I made is wrong and has changed at this point. I said originally when Mega Voltage happened that while the series was advertising it as Roy's show, it still felt like Liko was the main character. That's not the case anymore. The main characters of Pokemon Horizons post-time skip are definitely Alt and Roy. There's no question about it. And maybe that's also the reason why they only have 2 of the Elite Four members training our heroes now that I think about it, so they can continue to focus on Roy and Alt. I will say it is unfortunate that now Liko and Dot feel more like minor characters. It can't be helped, but even Terapagos feels sidelined now, despite in this episode Liko being called by Briar to talk about Terapagos. And I'm not even sure what Dot is going to learn from Penny. I'm curious to see what they do in the story together moving forward. Thematically, I really like where this arc is headed though. The previous arc was just us seeing where our heroes are at post-time skip, but they didn't really change that much, which disappointed a lot of fans, including me. Now it seems like our heroes are going to be changing. Roy's dilemma here is that he's too uptight and too fired up all the time, and Drayton is going to be the person to teach him that he needs to chill out. And Alt, he's too head first and goes into everything with no plan. And it seems like here, Lacey's gonna be the one to teach him that he needs to slow down. And this is major development for our heroes. I feel bad for Liko and Dot who aren't getting the same treatment, but maybe the writers feel like they've already given this to them in previous arcs of Horizon. Who knows? I am curious to see where this all goes. Obviously the arc's gonna make our heroes stronger so they can confront the explorers, but I wonder what the setup for the next confrontation with the explorers is. Liko was called up by Briar at the end of this episode, so I'm curious to see what Briar's going to tell our heroes. It feels like whatever it is could have some implications for the future, and this arc also teases the return of Freed in the intro. So there's a lot that needs to happen for everything to come together. I'm curious to see how it all goes. Episode 117 of Pokemon Horizons titled Pop Quiz. What does Alt's training involve just dropped. The episode revolves around Alt and Lacey's training saga. Lacey says Alt can get stronger by studying with her, but Alt refuses, saying that he will get stronger training alone. So she challenges him to a battle, saying that if she wins, he will have to listen to her. The battle is a one-on-one between Alt Sableye and Lacey's Excadrill. It's also a half quiz, half battle type battle. Lacey quizzes him about type matchups when Alt is attacking, telling him why his moves aren't doing much damage. She then asks him about Excadrill's special ability with its claws, which is the ability to dig, before using the move on Sableye. And finally, she asks about Excadrill's Terra type before terastallizing her Excadrill into a Fairy type, which is super effective against Sableye. A single Terra Blast and it's over. Lacey wins. So, since he lost, Alt agrees to study with her. So what does Lacey do to make him stronger? Quiz him, of course. She asks him first where Pikachu gets its electricity from. This leads to him investigating Captain Pikachu and eventually eating a Thunderbolt for it. Why is she having him doing that? It teaches him how to be more observant. As this is happening, by the way, we see Roy doing Drayton's training. Drayton is having Roy pretend to be a slowpoke to slow himself down. It's pretty funny. Meanwhile, Liko is back in Briar's office. Briar called her there to talk more about Terapagos, and Briar asked questions like, what does Terapagos like eating? And what's his behavior like? They're super basic questions, but she says she's trying to figure out the basics of Terapagos to help her learn more about it. While that's happening, we get to see some really fun interaction here between Dot and Carmine. Carmine is annoyed that Briar is interacting with Liko so much, despite she being her #1 assistant. And later on, when Briar is locked in, Carmine thinks that she's the #1 assistant and understands exactly what Briar wants when she's locked in. But it turns out, it's actually Liko who does it better. Carmine's frustrated about it when all of a sudden, Gimmighoul comes up to her and controls her to find it a coin. When she eventually snaps out of it, she chases it out of the room. Then later, she and Dot look for it together as Carmine feels bad for yelling at it and chasing it away. Eventually, they're able to find its coins and use it to track down Gimmighoul. Carmine learns from Dot that Gimmighoul is trying to turn into a Goldingo, so Carmine says that she will help Dot train by battling against her. The two then battle each other. It's a one-on-one battle. Carmine uses Sinistcha and Dot uses her Gimmighoul. And it's a Metapod versus Metapod style battle. Both Pokemon keep using Astonish on each other over and over and over again. The reason Carmine later says she was happy to train with Dot, she looks like her brother. A Kieran mention, oh my goodness. Going back to Lacey and Alt, Alt keeps getting questions wrong. He questions how this is supposed to make him stronger, and Lacey says she's just trying to get him to understand Pokemon first. She then brings out her Pulso and Minun and asks him what else can their electricity do. Alt doesn't know this, but that's when Drayton shows up, and he shows that they can be a way to do massages. Lacey asks him if he's actually training Roy or not, and he doesn't really answer before flying away in his Dragonite. Alt sees that Drayton is close with his Dragonite, and this becomes the main focus of the episode moving forward. Alt says that he wants to be friends with this Dragonite, but it doesn't come out of its ball. And that's when Dragonite does come out of its ball, when he says he wants to be friends with it. Him and Lacey sit down and discuss. Alt explains to Lacey that Dragonite only comes out when he he's fighting for someone else. We learn more about Alt's Dragonite. It was given to him by his father, and when Lacey asks him why he wants to get stronger, Alt tries to go around it saying that he wants to become the strongest just to be the greatest. But Dragonite and Lacey don't like that answer, and Lacey says that he needs to be honest with himself and his Pokemon. So that's when he reveals the truth. He wants to be stronger because he couldn't do anything against the 6 hero Pokemon. Lacey points out that just the fact that he wants to fight for someone else is a sign that he is fighting for others. She then asks Alt what he wants to do with Dragonite, and that's when an Alolan Exeggutor comes up and chases them as they're in its territory. Lacey uses this as a training for Alt by telling him to pay attention, and this time Alt does, as he observes what Exeggutor is doing first. He notices that Alolan Exeggutor gets dizzy after an attack, so he waits to get it dizzy before having Dragonite counterattack. A single Dragon Rush is enough to KO it. Afterwards, Dragonite picks him up as Lacey explains that it also wanted to battle with Alt. Alt realizes that he had been losing sight of Dragonite by focusing too much on his dad, and he says he looks forward to battling more often together. The episode ends with Alt sheepishly thanking Lacey for her training because it kinda helped, and that is the end of the episode. This is a really fun episode. We get battles, we get fun character interactions, and a continuing overarching story to move the plot forward. Lacey is one of the best characters we've gotten in the series in a while. She comes off very sincere while being strong, and her being the main trainer for someone like Alt really fits. And Alt himself is coming off more and more likable as he breaks down more of his barriers. We saw that his father gave him Dragonite in the past, but we still don't know much about his father and why he gave him the ball, and why he was homeless in Lumiose. At least now that we know that his father wanted him to use the Dragonite to help fight for others, and I hope we learn more about his father in the future. Roy doing Slowpoke training is a fun side plot. It feels a lot less significant than Alt's, but still, maybe it's because Roy already has had a bunch of development, and hopefully they can take this training somewhere in the future. Although from the summary of the episodes we've gotten in the future, I don't know how true that will be. I also really enjoy the interaction between Carmine and Dot here. I didn't think Kieran's existence would be acknowledged, but it was, which was surprising. And I know lots of people want him to get involved, but this show already has picked who they wanted to be involved in the story, so don't expect Kieran or Arvin to be involved at all. With the next episode focusing on Liko, it looks like everyone will have moments of growth throughout this arc, and all of this is leading to whatever Briar finds out about Terapagos that will move the plot forward about the explorers. Whatever it is, I can't wait. Episode 118 of Pokemon Horizons titled Liko and Hattrem's Bond of Happiness just dropped. This episode is character focused, specifically focusing on Liko and Hattrem. This episode starts off in the cafeteria as Liko is having breakfast, and arrives as she wants to go find Ditto Blocks. During this interaction, Liko sees Hattrem jumping around when asked about training, but Liko's only focusing on Charcadet's training. Hattrem even gives some of its breakfast to Charcadet for training. Liko asks it if it's sure, and looks at Hattrem and has a thought. They then head to the terrarium where they begin searching for these Ditto Blocks. Charcadet wants to battle them, but these Dittos prefer just turning into blocks instead of battling, so our heroes go around searching for them and finding them. They find them in many different areas of the terrarium, and there's some fun captures. Later, when Liko's looking around, Hattrem spots a shiny Ditto block and lets Meowscarada know. When Meowscarada brings it to Liko, Liko gives it credit. Liko also thinks Hattrem does not seem to be doing what it actually wants out of consideration for Meowscarada and Charcadet, and suggests that Liko's Charcadet should train with her Samurott. They do some training back and forth, and we get to see some new development with Charcadet, specifically how it incorporates movement with its Ember now. After a bit, Anne wants to take a break and make some sandwiches. Liko asks Hattrem to help, but Meowscarada calls it back to help heal Charcadet. As it's turning back around, Liko asks it if it's just doing things to please others or for itself, telling Hattrem it can do what it wants. Anne once again has thoughts on Hattrem, but when Liko asks, she says it's nothing. Then, as Liko and Anne begin making the sandwiches, Anne lets it out. She explains how she feels like she and Hattrem are similar. Anne was a middle child, and people always thought that she was doing things to put up with her brothers. However, that's not the case. She loved her brothers and sisters and was more than happy to do things for them. That's what she feels like Hattrem's doing. Liko realizes that this means the things she was saying to Hattrem just weren't true earlier, and then calls over Hattrem before heading over to get some water for them. Liko asks for Hattrem's help in making those sandwiches. This is when we have some heart-to-heart between Liko and Hattrem. Liko loves the sandwich Hattrem made, and that's because of its ability to read people's feelings. Liko tells it that she was worried when she first got it, but it's always helping others, and even today it was trying to help out Charcadet as much as it can. Liko apologizes for not seeing that. She says when she's with Hattrem, she feels calmer, and Hattrem fills her heart with happiness. Hattrem cries tears of happiness hearing this, and the two hug, and that's when it happens. A blue light emits from Hattrem as it evolves. When she fully evolves, Liko's inside of Hatterene, who's much bigger now than when she was a Hattrem. When Anne comes back, they're sitting down and talking. Anne thinks maybe this was a happiness evolution, something she made up, but it makes as much sense as what happened. Then Hatterene brings 3 of the Ditto blocks, showing how much it's become a pro in finding them. Anne doesn't want to be outdone, so she heads out with her Pokemon. As the other Dittos are scattering, Liko and her Pokemon notice one Ditto going into a cave. They follow it, and there they find it surrounded by Tynamo and Electric. electric. Liko wants to help it out and has Charcadet use Ember to stop them. When Charcadet's being surrounded, she asks her other Pokemon to help out, but they stop her and show that this is actually a great training moment for Charcadet. Its new movement with its Ember that it's learned in its battle against Samurott earlier, it's able to eventually clear all of them out. Only then later for the bigger, badder boss, the Electros, to come out. It seems to intimidate all the Dynamo and Electric in the cave. Liko wants to find an opportunity to make a run for it, but that's when Hatterene steps up. Even while holding Ditto, she stands up in front of the Electros. Her aura intimidates it, even before anything happens. Then, Hatterene uses Psycho Cut to knock it out. She then cheerily heals it up, and Electros gets up. It tries attacking again, only to get knocked out by another Psycho Cut. Then, she once again cheerily heals it up, and Electros gets up. And a final time, Hatterene does it. And this time when it gets up, Hatterene shows that it's claws, which scares it away, and Electros runs away. Liko then comes out of the cave with all of her Pokemon draped over her, and Anne talks about how her Pokemon are showing her so much love. However, Anne says that her love for Liko won't be topped, and it begins snowing. Not just regular snow either, diamond dust. Anne says that she had the school have that diamond dust come through. If you don't know, diamond dust is a phenomenon in Pokemon where during special days, it doesn't just snow an area, it has these dust things come through. If you've never seen it in the game, you can look it up. Anne then says Liko always bottles up her worries, so she was worried about her, but now, seeing her Pokemon show her love, and the rising Volt tacklers, she feels like she'll be fine. The next morning, as Liko and Anne are having breakfast, Dot and Roy arrive. They react to Hatterene evolving into a Hatterene before telling Liko that Briar has told them that she's done with compiling all of her research on Terapagos, which means now, she'll probably give them their next plan to deal with the explorers. And that's where we end this episode. This is a super sweet episode. Not a lot of action either, just a bunch of character focused stuff. Like I said earlier, the main focus is on Liko and Hatterene. It was super sweet and needed. Hatterene's Liko's Pokemon that's done the least in this entire series. Honestly, her evolution didn't even feel deserved, if I'm to be completely honest. However, I do think it was time. As the series has gone on, Hatterene has just felt way too underpowered. Now that it's evolved, I'm hoping it'll contribute to battles and climax moments unlike before. Liko and Anne's friendship also shines in this episode. You can tell they're super close, and it's this relationship where Liko benefits a lot from having an outgoing person like Anne next to her. And I don't know if it was just me, but it also felt like this would be the last time we'll see Anne for a while. Maybe I'm misreading this, but Anne talking about how she used to worry about Liko, but she thinks she'll be fine now, feels like the writer slowly writing off Anne. I don't know. I could be wrong though. And finally, Hatterene's calculated, sadistic, yet sweet personality also shines through here. This isn't the first time it's happened. Hatterene also did it when she first evolved versus those Annihilapes, but she hasn't done it in a long time. So it's fun to see that attitude on a Pokemon like that. And for Liko's Pokemon, it's not just the Hatterene either. Meowscarada's Pokedex talks about how it gets jealous if it sees other Pokemon getting attention from its trainer. So if you look in the background, she's always making faces when Liko's talking to other Pokemon. It's pretty funny. Overall, a fun episode with a lot of character interactions, and an evolution that I hope will mean we will see this Pokemon more in the future. Only time will tell. Episode 119 in Pokemon Horizons titled Hang in There Crocalor for the Sake of Tomorrow just dropped. This episode starts where the last one ended as our heroes arrive at Briar's. She's distracted at first, talking about how beautiful stellar form Terapagos is before Carmine gets her back on track. Here, the idea is reiterated that Terapagos' stellar form can get rid of Laquium. However, it needs power. The last time they got power from the 6-hero Pokemon, but it wasn't enough. They need to have all 18 types as Diana theorized. But Briar says it's not just about types, they need to have all 18 Terra types as well, and those Pokemon also need to be just as strong as the 6-hero Pokemon. Dot also wants to get some more data on Laquium, so she's gonna contact Cervantes. Hearing all of this, Roy wants to get going and get the 6-hero Pokemon back right now. He's raring to go and rushing when they're outside by the reception area. But Liko tells him to take a deep breath. Nothing good will come from rushing. They should do things one at a time like they always do. Then, Drayton, who was watching him, arrives. Roy thanks him for helping train him, and Drayton proposes a battle to see if Roy can relax, stating that he views his methods not as training, but as playing. Roy's initially hesitant about the rematch, but Liko, and especially Crocalor, encourage him to do so since Crocalor is also raring to go. Seeing this, Roy agrees to a rematch. This rematch is a lot about what Roy learned from the previous battle. It's the same pair of battle, Crocalor and Kilowattrel versus Kingdra and Archaludon. This time, Drayton immediately starts with Rain Dance from Kingdra, which causes a slippery floor. He then follows this up with an Electro Shot from Archaludon. Crocalor tries to dodge it, but it slips on the ice and is saved by Kilowattrel. Drayton then has Kingdra use Hurricane, which knocks Crocalor off Kilowattrel's back. Crocalor begins slipping on the ice again, but Roy gets Crocalor to calm down and use Flame Charge to clear the ice from the floor. He then has both of his Pokemon Pokemon attack Archaludon. Drayton responds by having it use Snarl, but they burst through it and both get a hit on Archaludon. However, there's a new wrinkle from the last battle. Archaludon has Stamina as its ability, which boosts its defense when it gets hit by a physical move. Drayton then has Archaludon fire back with a Metal Burst, which hits both Pokemon with double damage. As Roy's trying to figure out what to do next, Crocalor is ready to go again. It once again gets on top of Kilowattrel's back and flies towards his opponent. However, this time, Crocalor comes up with an idea. It turns around on Kilowattrel's back and uses Flamethrower to propel the two through Kingdra's Hurricane like a rocket. They succeed, blasting through it. However, Kilowattrel misses its attack because Swift Swim is still active, but Crocalor falls off Kilowattrel's back, which allows Kilowattrel to become faster and get a direct hit on with Spark on Kingdra. While Crocalor is falling, Roy has Crocalor use Disarming Voice, which KOs Kingdra. It's a 2-on-1 now. Drayton then uses another 2 Electro Shots from Archaludon, which Crocalor and Kilowattrel dodge, and on the return, Crocalor jumps from the air to fly in with a Flame Charge, but it's mostly blocked by Archaludon, who then fires back with another Metal Burst. However, before Crocalor can get hit, Kilowattrel comes in and takes the damage. It looks like it might survive, but then it looks like Crocalor like, do it for me, before going down. So now, it's a 1-on-1 versus Archaludon. While Archaludon charges Electro Shot, Roy thinks about Crocalor's history and his growth. Then, there's a clash between Flamethrower and Electro Shot. As this is happening, by the way, the egg on Crocalor's head is going crazy, shaking. It's been doing that the whole episode, and even last episode if you noticed. Then, Crocalor fires off a stomping tantrum, which Archaludon tries to block. Crocalor keeps stomping to put more and more power into it, more and more and more, until eventually, the egg on its head hatches, and a Firebird comes out. After this, Crocalor begins glowing blue, as it starts evolving. Crocalor evolves into a Skeledirge. Everyone around him is hyped. The Flame Bird on top seems to be a separate entity of sort. The battle still has to continue, however, so Drayton brings out his Terra Orb to terrestrial his Archaludon. Roy responds in kind. Drayton then has Archaludon fire off a Draco Meteor, and Roy responds with a Skeledirge Flamethrower. Both Pokemon take damage as Draco Meteor is also hitting Skeledirge. The dust settles, and both Pokemon are seemingly down. That is until the Firebird on Skeledirge wakes it up. And since Archaludon is down and Skeledirge is up, it means the winner is Roy. Afterwards, Drayton tells Roy that he seems more relaxed now. Roy thanks him for his training. Roy then apologizes to Liko for rushing himself. Then there are more thanks, as Liko thanks Anne for her help with training, and Alt even reluctantly thanks Lacey. As they're all getting ready to head out, we see Dot and Penny talking to Cervantes on the side. He lets them know that they can find Laquium data in the Exceed Museum, which is really a data center, but they'll have to go there directly. So Dot looks at Penny, as she plans on going there with her, and Penny's surprised, and that's where we end the episode. This was a really good battle episode, one of the best we've gotten in a while. I think this was the best time to do the Skeledirge evolution, as it seems like our heroes are getting pretty close to battling the villains for a final time. So it seems like they need to get dramatically stronger soon. This not only allows them to do that, but also mirrors the previous school training arc. It's funny, it feels like the writers realize, oh snap, we need to do a bunch of evolutions to power up our heroes, so they're doing them all in a row. But I don't mind it. These last few episodes of Horizons have been the best of the post-time skip era. Now let's talk about the evolution itself. While I was hyped because the evolution looked good and it was well done, I am not looking forward to this at all. I like Skeledirge, it's my favorite Paldean starter, but if any of y'all watch Diamond and Pearl, then you know that the writers do not like big, immobile Pokemon. Poor Torterra got roasted in Diamond and Pearl after evolving. They made an entire arc about how it doesn't even know how to attack anymore, and it learned how to attack, only for it to never win again. I really hope that doesn't happen here with Skeledirge, but I have a feeling it might. And who's gonna replace him? Of course, the poster child for popular Pokemon, Lucario. Again, hopefully I'm wrong. I do like that the writers saw all the reactions about the other Elite Four members and Kieran not being part of this arc, so they decided to give them a completely silent cameo similar to Arven. I laughed when I saw that. And finally, I like that Penny's actually going to be involved in this arc. The end of the episode where Dot schemes up sneaking into Exceed Museum with Penny's help feels like such a growth for someone who hated going outside before the time skip, and I really like it. With the next episode focusing on these two, I cannot wait to see how Dot's arc is going to conclude. Episode 120 Pokemon Horizons titled Dot and Penny, Secret Mission just dropped. We start this episode. Dot is outside the Brave Volivine getting ready to leave. Liko and Roy and Alt are all worried about her and tell her to contact them if things get hairy, but they trust her, especially since, as Dot points out, this needs to be a very covert mission and only her and Penny know how to hack. When Dot and Penny arrive at the museum, we see Dot in a pink frilly outfit. Why? Well, she's way too well known around these parts to be wearing her regular clothes. We also see here, when Gimmighoul accidentally falls over, that it has collected a a ton of coins. Penny thinks it's well over 900, and we learn that Gimmighouls actually keep count of how many coins they specifically have. They get to the museum 30 minutes before closing and hide in the 5th floor. They were given a set of instructions by Cervantes, letting them know which floor had cameras and which floor had guard Pokemon, and after the museum is closed for the day, they get out and begin trying to get into the data center. They start by first hacking the camera so it's disabled. They put a fake image of the area there. Then, they head to the next floor where the guard Pokemon are, and they take out the guard Pokemon, but that sounds the alarm to the explorers who have signals to detect whether the guard Pokemon are moving or not. While they're doing this, Gimmigool gets out of Dot's Pokeball, and it wants to look for its coin, but Dot tells it they're busy. Then they arrive near the elevator. There, they had set up a time with Cervantes where he could remotely unlock the elevator, and that takes them to the server room. When they get there, it is a massive room with a ton of data, so they need to get cracking. Penny and Dot then begin working together to hack it, while their Pokemon are staying in guard. Meanwhile, Gimmigool decide to head back up the museum to look for coins. That's when Indy and Rubella arrive due to the suspicion from the security. They spot Dot's Gimmigool just as Dot and Penny finish the hacking. They're ready to leave when they notice that Gimmigool isn't there. When they head back to the museum, they spot Indy and Rubella. They were both being controlled by Gimmigool to find a coin, and Indy had almost put in one, but it's interrupted by Penny and Dot arriving. Then, as they get ready to make a run for it, in front of them arrives Calls. This then turns into a battle. Everyone brings out their Pokemon. Indy and Rubella with Drapion and Scolipede, Calls with her Medicham and Xatu, and Penny brings out her Jolteon. Indy and Rubella use the Strong Spheres on their Pokemon, and Calls uses it on her Medicham. At first, Penny and Dot are able to hold off well due to their type advantages. When the poison moves come about, Dot has her Tinkaton block it, and Penny is able to use electric moves from Jolteon to do massive damage to Xatu. They have great synergy and type advantage currently. This, however, turns when Calls decide to split him up. She does this by having Xatu teleport to kidnap Gimmigool, who's looking around for coins. She then keeps teleporting around the room to cause Dot to chase her before she hits a button that caused the room to split with fire shutters. So now, the type advantage that our heroes had from earlier is gone. Penny has to deal with poison types, which is super effective against her Sylveon, and now Dot has to deal with Charles' Medicham, which is super effective against her Tinkaton. Dot is in a bad spot here. She tries to get Tinkaton to charge her hammer, but Xatu teleports in front of it and uses Aerial Ace on it to prevent it. It then uses Teleport to get away from Liquidation from Quaxwell, which accidentally hits Tinkaton. Dot then tries comboing a Brutal Swing into a Gaetan Hammer, but in the last moment, Charles has Xatu use Power Swap to take Tinkaton's attack before attacking back. This causes Quaxwell to be distracted and get hit by Axe Kick. Then, as both of Dot's Pokemon are down for the count, Charles says Medicham attack, only for Gimmigool to jump in front of it and get hit. This distracts Dot, and Charles uses this as the opportunity to teleport Xatu towards Dot and take her phone to take the data back. Dot is in a bad position, but she can't run away here, and she knows that. She then notices Gimmigool pointing at a coin in the corner over and over again. Dot realizes what Gimmigool is asking about and decides to bet on it. She has it distract Charles and her Pokemon by having it use Astonish before grabbing the coin from the corner and throwing it at Gimmigool. As it lands on Gimmigool's chest, it seems like that was coin 1000 because Gimmigool begins evolving. Gimmigool becomes a Goldango. After it evolves, you notice how much faster Goldango is because the first thing it does is fly towards Charles and grab back Dot's phone. It then picks up both Quaxwell and Tinkaton. Dot recalls them before deciding to trust Goldango and get on its surfboard. The surfboard here is awesome. She gets away from Charles' Pokemon before using Good as Gold to break through the wall where Penny is. There, we see that Penny actually defeated Indy and Rubella's Pokemon soundly despite having a type disadvantage. Dot then picks up Penny on the surfboard and they begin leaving the museum. We get an awesome action shot here as they break through the glass to get out of the museum. Charles says that at this point, even with the data, they won't be able to do much. But still, they have gotten away with the data. Dot drops off Penny, who says she'll give the data to Jacques to research before they head their separate ways. Finally, she returns to the ship. Everyone happy to see her back, and also able to see Goldango here. They leave the area they're in for the night just for safety, and in the next morning, we see Dot going through her data, showing how the Laquium sphere is made and also confirming the existence of the Laquium core. However, that is secondary as she gets a call. It's Freed, once again. He says he's returning. From where? Base. And that's where we end this episode. This is a really fun episode. It was structured almost like a heist movie. Our heroes break into an area, take out the guards, and hack their way in, but the escape goes wrong as always. I thought this episode would be really about Dot because the previous episodes really have been focused on Roy and Liko, but this episode was more about Gimmigool than Dot. The primary focus is the intrusion and the battle itself, but Gimmigool doesn't really get involved until the very end after it evolves evolves into a Goldango. Goldango is one of my favorite Pokemon from Paldea. It's such a cool Pokemon, and I'm glad that out of all the characters possible, Dot got it. She isn't a battler, so it's not like we're going to see it all the time. So anytime we do get to see it used, it's going to be a kind of a treat. It also can be used as a transportation Pokemon now, allowing Roy, Liko, and Dot to have one each. So now they won't be as reliant on the Brave Olivine. Hopefully that can open up some opportunity for some cool stuff. But the anime's never really taken advantage of that. The only weird thing about this episode was just the setup for it, and mainly I'm just talking about how the explorers are set up. Why are Indy and Rubella hanging out in the security guard room just watching video? Who does that? Aren't they supposed to be one of the top 2 grunts? It makes no sense unless somehow they were tipped off or knew that something was going to happen. There was no indication of that in this episode. It just feels so contrived just for the sake of plot. Other than that though, a really good episode. With our 3 heroes now each having one of their Pokemon evolved, the story is going to focus on the return of Freed, and I'm curious to see where the story goes from here. Why was he in space? How did he get there? What did he find out? All that and much more in the future. Episode 121 of Pokemon Horizons titled Catcher in the Sky just dropped. This episode begins where the last one left off, as Freed calls Dot. He lets her know that he's returning. From where? Space. He informs the entire crew that he has concluded his investigation in space. The spaceship he's on is about to descend in 3 hours. However, he forgot to tell the Space Center staff that he was landing, so he will give the Rising Voltacklers his coordinates and would like them to re-welcome him aboard the Brave Olivine. After hearing this, everyone begins preparing for his landing, including throwing a party. While they're on their way to the landing site, Ludlow explains to our heroes how rockets work. The footage he uses? Based on his hit film, Guy Silver's Space Journey vs. Sharpedo, of course. He explains how rockets break apart in space, head to the International Space Station, and perform return landings. After he finishes explaining everything, however, they get another call from Freed, letting them know that he's had another accident. His control mode isn't working on his pod, so he had to switch to ballistic mode, meaning he's going to be landing somewhere else. Dot triangulates his position using GPS, but can't do the math on where he's going to land next because the velocity involved in an incoming spaceship would make the calculations really complex. However, this is where we get to see for the first time Orla's Metagross's Pokedex entry come into play. Metagross has always been labeled a supercomputer, and we get to see it in action here as it performs some complex math to figure out where Freed's going to land. Then they begin heading in that direction. However, as they're on their way, they realize they won't make it in time, so they activate the emergency infinite rising mode of the Brave Olivine. And unlike last time, it doesn't completely break apart the ship as Orla has made massive upgrades to it. Eventually, they reach a point where they realize they will arrive at his location on time, so they turn off the upgrade. Just as they're preparing to meet him, however, they get another call from Freed again. This time, he's saying that his parachute isn't working on his return pod, and that he's counting on them. The parachute not working means that now, if our heroes can't stop the pod, he's going to crash into the ground and splatter like paste. Everyone panics, especially Murdoch. However, Molly and Orla keep a cool head as Roy decides to call a strategy meeting. Murdoch's gonna drive the ship while the kids try to figure out a strategy. They go through some ideas on how they could catch the ship, and they eventually realize they can use moves to slow down the pod, although that will be difficult. Liko thinks maybe Hatcherin's Psychic or Terapagos' Protect could work. However, if that doesn't work, Alt has the best idea. Just blast it all with their moves. As Orla counts down the time until the spaceship crashes, Liko gets the brilliant idea of having Terapagos' Protect act as the blocking agent, while having Hatcherin's Psychic move it into place to block the pod. Then, every Pokemon from the Brave Olivine blasts it below from behind the Protect shield to push back and slow down the pod. And it seems to work, as it's holding the pod back, slowing it down significantly. However, just then, the pod tips over the Protect bubble and flies over the deck of the Brave Olivine. Everyone is shocked. They get flashbacks of what happened last time, but this time, Cap won't let it happen, so Cap goes flying towards it with a Volt Tackle through the air, trying desperately to catch it, but he's too far away. He's close, but he can't reach. A metaphor for the last time this happened. However, this time, Terapagos gives Cap the power boost he needs as he sends him Terra Energy. Cap then terrestrializes into a flying type. This allows him to get under the pod to slow it down. Roy then gets on his Kilowattrel and flies back under the ship. What for? To use the ship's force field on the battlefield to catch the pod and have it land properly. And he's successful in doing so as a return pod lands on the deck safe and sound. As smoke from the pod fills the area, out comes Freed. However, we don't get to see him yet, he's still shrouded in smoke. We see Orla getting extremely emotional about his return, and the kids are super happy. When the smoke clears, Orla isn't in front of Freed, she's in front of a giant Mega Starmie, and in front of the kids is Freed. As he's about to explain his new Starmie, he gets hit by Cap's Volt Tackle. Cap is also emotional seeing Freed's return. As Freed apologizes to Cap and Orla for worrying them, the episode ends with everyone mobbing Freed as he has finally returned home. This is such a strangely directed episode for me. I'm not sure how to feel about it. For an episode this big, you would hope that the writing and direction would be much stronger. But while the writing is fine, it just feels so disjointed. I don't mind the comedy in this episode. It helps bring levity to the situation. But the way the episode is structured just feels bizarre. They get a call from Freed saying he's on his way back, but he has an accident, followed by our heroes doing something. Then he calls a second time and does the same thing, and then he calls a third time and does the same thing. I don't understand why they structured the episode like this at all. It felt very formulaic because by the time you hear the second call, you already know what's going to happen the third time he calls. The second half of the episode is better, but once again, the direction here hurts it in my opinion. After our heroes slow down the pod as Cap is flying towards it, the Brave Olivine is supposed to be falling down towards the floor very fast as well. It's trying to keep up with the falling pod, and terminal velocity is really fast, so Cap is also plummeting down while desperately trying to reach the pod. But it doesn't look like that at all. Instead, it looks like everyone is just hovering in the air while Cap is trying to capture it, and that's because the animation direction just doesn't make it that convincing. If the animation direction was better here, I think we would feel the speed of the fall from both the Brave Olivine, the pod, and Cap desperately all trying to catch it in a mad scramble. As it is now, that entire segment in my opinion falls flat. We do get to see the cool bit where we finally see Cap in his terrestrial form, and that was fun, but overall the way it was done just wasn't executed well in my opinion. And the same thing with the return. Looking back at it now, I think maybe it would have been better if the episode just ended with him returning and before anyone gets to say anything. The whole bit afterwards where Orla is letting her emotions be known only for it to be Starmie, while funny, feels cruel to a character who's been affected most by his disappearance. That whole bit could have happened at the beginning of next episode and it might have fit better, who knows. I think what overall hurts it is that it hasn't felt like there's been this massive build up to this return. This is not really the episode's fault, but the fault of the post-time skip Horizons era as a whole. We've gotten a few hints here and there, but there wasn't this massive heavily built up to thing. In pre-time skip Horizons, sometimes when leading up to things, it took too long for things to happen, but I would rather have that than what we get in the post-time skip, which is just jumping into major plot points without any build up. And that's why this overall just felt so I'm mixed on Freed's return and how it was executed here. Episode 122 of Pokemon Horizons titled Red Hot Wings, Roy vs. Freed just dropped. This episode is about Freed, but it's also about Roy and his resolve as the leader of the Rising Voltacklers. This episode begins with Freed learning that the team disbanded when he disappeared. However, Roy brought them back together. Then, they all sit down and learn about what Freed was doing over the last year. First, how he survived. After he fell from the ship near Laquium, he was getting tossed around in the wind and noticed that the top of Mount Pericarp was consistent with the shape of an impact from a meteor. So, after he was saved by Charizard, obviously, he let things die down and went back through Laquium to investigate. There, he gathered some samples of the soil and took them to Hoenn, where he found the stone expert himself, Steven, to help him out. Steven confirmed that the soil in Laquium had traces of elements of things from space. So, it's like what Lucius said, Laquium isn't from this planet. So in order to learn more about it, Freed felt like he had to learn more about meteorites, and the way to do that was in space. So he headed to Mossy, where he was yelling like a madman in the Space Center about wanting to go to space. And he's about to get kicked out when the director notices his passion. He does a year of training and learning to be an astronaut, and this is also where Freed met Starmie. Starmie taught him a lot of things in the process, which is why he nicknamed him Instructor Starmie. He became friends with it, caught it, and eventually even mega evolved with it. After a year, he was ready to go to space, and that's when he left the voicemail from episode 100. He then went to space. When Altair says he's impressed and he says he wants to be just like his master and go high into space above Rayquaza. In space, Freed found a meteorite that had similar soil components to the meteor that hit Laquium. He shows it in powder form here. Freed theorizes that a long time ago, a giant meteorite containing this stuff hit Mount Pericarp. That reaction from the explosion plus the atmosphere of the Earth created the perfect conditions for Laquium to form. Dot then tells Freed about the strong spheres that Exceed had created. Freed thinks that that's because they're able to get a lot of Laquium because there is a core that's producing infinite Laquium. That's the original meteorite, and that's what Gibeon was looking for but never found. But it seems Spinel has. Liko tells Freed what they learned from Briar about needing the 18 Terratypes to give enough power to Terrapagos to fully erase Laquium. So, our heroes have a plan. Get the 6 heroes back, get the 18 Terratypes, and stop the launch of the strong spheres. And they can work on it one at a time. However, this and when Alt says that since Freed is back, Roy is no longer the leader of the Voltacklers. That disappoints Roy, but Roy abdicates his duty. However, Freed is not happy with how fast Roy abdicated his leadership, as gathering everyone on the ship the second time means he's now the leader and he's taking care of them. So, seeing Roy do this, his first act, now that he was considered the leader again, was disbanding the team. This shocks everyone, and the next time we see them, we're outside. The idea seems to be that if Roy can beat Freed in a battle, the Rising Bull tacklers will stay together. Freed is trying to test Roy's resolve. The battle is a pretty good one. Early on, they're evenly matched, but because of Crocolor's evolution into Skeledirge, it's slower, so it's not able to hit Flame Charge, and it's not able to dodge as well as before. So Roy tells the Skeledirge to dig in to be able to counterattack. Skeledirge gets hit by Charizard's Dragon Claw, and Charizard stands over it, telling it something. Whatever it was, it inspires Skeledirge, and that gets Roy fired up too. He's ready for the full battle now. The next time Charizard uses Dragon Claw, Skeledirge digs in and is able to grab Charizard's tail and slam it to the ground. It then gets on its hind leg, and the bird on Skeledirge becomes a mic, and he performs a Torch Song. The Torch Song is able to bring down Charizard. When Roy is about to use Stomping Tantrum, Freed terrestrializes Charizard into a Dark type to avoid super effective damage while putting himself at an advantage since Skeledirge is part Ghost type. Charizard then uses Terra Blast, and Roy has Skeledirge counter with Flamethrower before terrestrializing Skeledirge too. Then, the two Pokemon use Flamethrower on each other, but Skeledirge just comes out on top and KOs Freed's Charizard, which means the winner is Roy. Roy's incredibly happy. He also sees how far the little Fuecoco that looked up to Charizard has come. We get a flashback to what Roy said when he first got Fuecoco about training to become just as strong and cool as Charizard, and now he's accomplished it. Later in the evening, we learn that Freed is leaving. He has to head back to the Moss Deep Space Center, and then afterwards, he's gonna go to Devon to research the sample he bought back. For now, he has Cap stay behind with the Brave Olivine, and he hands Roy a briefcase, something that he needs to give the Black Rayquaza. What is it? We won't know because he tells him not to open the briefcase. And unexpectedly, he Mega Evolves his Charizard into a Mega Charizard Y before flying off, and that's where we end this episode. A lot happens this episode, and I'm not sure how to fully feel about everything. Let's start with Freed himself. Him surviving isn't a surprise. He fell with a Pokemon that can fly. I would have assumed that happened. But the weird thing to me is that he went back to Laquium to get some samples before heading to Hoenn. That's fine. He meets up with Steven Stones to go into Devon Corp. That's also fine. But the rocket thing to me is so nonsensical that I have a hard time believing it. How he got the permission to fly is one thing. You can just kind of write that off as a fun quirk of the director of the Space Center who likes people with passion. Whatever. Training to go to space and then actually going on a ship isn't something that happens privately. Moss Deep is like the equivalent of NASA here. When astronauts are training to go to space, that's public knowledge. It's a big deal when people go to space. You aren't just secretly doing something that's not going to be seen on TV. So you're telling me not a single one of our heroes ever saw or heard that an astronaut called Freed has been training to go to the space station? I just find it hard to believe when they were trying to search for him so desperately. And now, the entire first voicemail also doesn't make sense in retrospect. In it, he apologizes for not getting in touch with them. But why didn't he? It's not like he didn't have his phone. If this was something where he lost all of the technology he had, and then eventually he was able to get in contact with them, that's one thing. But he has a cell phone with him the whole time, and he didn't think to call a single time to tell the ship of the people he's flying with every day that, hey guys, I know you saw me violently fall out the ship and potentially fall to my death, but I'm okay. That seems irresponsible even for someone who's supposed to be forgetful like Freed. And then in that same voicemail he says, oh, the explorers are watching and it would be trouble if his movements were known. He's in the Moss Deep Space Center, what do you mean? It's not like he's moving around a ton. And the tone of that voicemail where it's all menacing does not make sense because in this episode, we see he's just chilling outside of the rocket facility. He's not worried about any explorers. He also doesn't imply that his phone was tapped or anything, so that doesn't make sense. He was just doing training at a space center. You don't train 24 hours in a day. So after he does his training for the day, you're telling me he leaves his closest friends in the dark for over a year with access to all of his technology? What are we doing? If they decided to change how they wanted to bring him back, fine. But you have to go back to that voicemail and try to make things match. And in this case, it absolutely doesn't. That's why the return didn't feel so satisfactory to me last episode, and his explanation this episode is even less so. Honestly, I kinda wish he would have stayed away until the moment the plot required him to make a heroic return, because in this case, it makes him look like a terrible person, and it makes our heroes look like idiots. Even at the beginning, when they joke and point at Murdoch for breaking up the team, that's something you do only after you've searched and searched and searched for Freed and everything has been exhausted. But it doesn't even sound like they did a simple Google search. So the ending of the original whole pre-time skip arc, what was the point of it? I just absolutely hate this explanation. The battle we get is fine. The correct person won. Roy is now the main character and the active leader. He does not need a character like Freed to hijack what he has rightfully earned from the beginning of the time skip arc. It would make Roy, who brought everyone back together, look weak if you had to give up that responsibility now. So, even though I know a lot of people are upset that Fried isn't getting involved and he's going away again, after seeing how everything has been handled so far, keep that man away as far as possible. Honestly, the last 2 episodes have been really poor. There was no build up to the Fried return, and the explanation we get is so unbelievably poor that I'm trying to figure out what major thing happened in the writing department to cause a shift like this. When a viewer of your show has to think about what the writing department is doing, it's terrible writing. So this episode is a mixed bag. If you're like me and you prefer the story to be the most important part, you're going to be thoroughly disappointed in this episode. But if you're more about the battles, the battle itself is pretty good. So this episode is half and half. Episode 123 of Pokemon Horizons, titled Shock and Horrors. Mochi Mayhem on the ship just dropped. Diana arrives early in a car to where she wanted to meet our heroes. So, she calls back her rever room and decides to lay back in her car for a bit. While doing so, she says she wishes it was a little bit bigger before she goes to sleep. And after doing so, we see Petulant's silhouette next to her. In the Brave Olivine, we see that Liko is waiting on Diana, as she says she has a gift for Liko. Inside the ship, Roy is learning some ship maintenance from Orla, and we see Petulant sneaking around the area. Eventually, Orla takes a break and heads to the kitchen, where she sees a plate of mochi. Murdoch says he didn't make it, but they think it might be a souvenir from Diana, so they all try it. They all like it at first, but then Orla looks like she gets sick, and the next time we see the place, there's no one in the kitchen. Dot looks for Murdoch and calls his phone, only to find his phone laying on the floor, and food still in the oven. She tells the rest of the group that he would never do that, so they go out to search for him. The next bit of this episode is just like a horror film. One by one, people are getting picked off, starting with Kilowattrel. Then, our heroes find Orla, but she's doing the mochi dance and coming towards them. They're terrified and run away. They find Molly and Murdoch, and same thing with them. We then see Petulant in the shadows, lurking. It gets ult from behind a cardboard box. When Cap tries to chase it, it gets caught. As Liko, Dot, and Roy are in the kitchen, the mochi mayhem continues as Dot gets caught trying to stop Murdoch from the elevator. Funnily enough, Quaxwell doesn't because it loves dancing. Roy and Liko are outside and they get surrounded. They run away and go back in the ship, only for Roy to also be affected. The last person remaining is Liko, and she gets cornered and caught too. And now everyone in the ship is infected by Petulant. And in a funny twist, Terrapagos transforms into its Terraform and becomes a disco ball, and everyone starts dancing and doing the mochi dance. All the humans are being forced to do it by Petulant, except Quaxwell, who's just dancing because it likes to. Then, the rest of the Pokemon in the ship begin coming and dancing too. It's a horrifying concept with a funny ending. And it contrasts well when you think about how horrifying it must be to be controlled versus how lighthearted they're showing it to be. All that comes to a stop when Diana arrives. We learn that Petulant is Diana's Pokemon. It's a Pokemon that she says is willing to do whatever for her. So when she said in her car that she wished she had a bit more room, Petulant took that to mean to take over the Brave Olivine to give Diana the biggest room possible. How did Diana catch Petulant? Similar to the Petulant story from the game, Diana was near the riverbank washing her clothes when she came upon the mythical Pecha Berry. She and Amber went to Kitakami where they were watching some festival dances. There, she watched a Ludicolo dance, and when it was tired, she was gonna offer it the mythical Pecha Berry, but it disappeared. So she says she wishes there was a way that she could help it. And that's when it all started happening there. All the people of the hamlet started doing the mochi dance, and she saw a whole bunch of Pokemon being controlled. She realizes it's Petulant's doing. She theorizes that maybe it mistook Diana and Amber for the old couple from its backstory. Amber is shocked. Diana rejects Petulant, and the two take down all the controlled Pokemon. However, Petulant is persistent. Amber tells her that maybe it wants to be with her, so Diana captures it. And that's the story. They then remember that Diana is here for a reason, and that reason turns out to be the auspicious armor that she had in her castle, and she gives it to Liko and her Charcadet. This means the evolution of Charcadet is gonna happen soon, and the episode ends with a fun gag, as our heroes forgot about Ludlow, who's still stuck doing the mochi dance. A fun episode with two major bits of development. First, Diana has a mythical Pokemon. The capture seems random, but any captures you see from here on out are most likely the writers realizing that they need to have some Pokemon that can fill the quota for the 18 Terra types they need. And Petulant being the poison one, they can do this without having to create too much of a backstory as to why it is as powerful as it is, because it's a mythical Pokemon. The second is Liko getting the item to evolve her Charcadet. It kind of came out of nowhere here, and this makes me think more and more that this series might come to an end way quicker than we think, but I'm wondering why. The next generation of games isn't out until November, a full 11 months away from when I'm recording this. Do they plan on starting a new series early, similar to Aim to be a Pokemon Masters? I don't really know. Other than that, this is a fun, different style episode that's only really there to help continue to facilitate the strength of our characters, both for Diana and for Liko. Next episode seems to be the beginning of something more serious, something more major, so having a fun episode prior makes sense to me. Episode 124 of Pokemon Horizons, titled Storming Explorers Headquarters, just dropped. Amethyst arrives on the Brave Olivine and meets with our heroes. They then go to the planning room where they go over their plans on storming the Explorers HQ, because according to Amethyst, that's where the 6 hero Pokemon are currently located. There's a nice bit of flashback from Amethyst as our heroes are getting ready and heading there, where he reminisces on episode 2, where he stormed into the ship to steal Liko/the pendant. We also see that Liko's Charcadet is fired up, and it even puts on the auspicious armor it got last episode from Diana, and is going to battle with that. Our heroes then arrive near the HQ and surround it, before, like a heist movie, doing an entrance and fighting off the baddies. It's almost like a video game level in the way it plays out. First, Amethyst barges in from the front and fights the grunts, allowing the ship to go undetected. Roy and Ult come in from the roof. However, there are more grunts, so they mega evolve and begin battling them. But this is also a second distraction. The main thing is Liko and Dot trying to get access to the underground car park where the Pokemon are being kept. Liko and Dot manage to get to the door, but as Dot is working on cracking the door, Indy and Rubina arrive to stop them. They both bring out Salamence, and Dot and Liko get ready to battle. However, before they can, the flamethrower from the Salamence is absorbed by Charcadet. Then, Amethyst arrives and decides to join the fight with Liko, allowing Dot to hack the door in the meantime. This 2-on-2 battle is a lot of back and forth. At first, Charcadet and Ceruledge have the upper hand due to the one-dimensional attacking nature of Pokemon under the influence of the Strong Sphere. But then for whatever reason, they're able to listen to instructions and use Dragon Dance to give the upper hand to Indy and Rubina. Liko's Charcadet is getting more and more comfortable battling in the auspicious armor as the battle progresses. Eventually, in the battle, our heroes' Pokemon are taking too much damage, so Liko's Charcadet use Fire Spin to protect themselves. It's also a bit of a bait, as Salamances come in from the top to try and attack, only to be led downwards toward a direct attack from Charcadet and Ceruledge. And as the fire clears, we see that another Pokemon is there, as Charcadet is no more, as it has evolved into an Armarouge. Afterwards, Liko's Armarouge used Clear Smog to reset the effects of Dragon Dance before Phantom Force from Ceruledge takes out the Salamence. And to take them out once and for all, a boosted Armor Cannon from Ceruledge KOs the two Pokemon. Afterwards, Indy and Rubina get a call, most likely from Spinel, as they retreat. Roy and Ult have also finished their battle, and they arrive. They say that both Lucario and Cap are down for the count, as well as Sableye. So now, the full group is back together. Our heroes then get Zerk and Onya to watch the back in case something happens, and they all go inside the HQ. There, they find boxes where the Pokemon are, each of our heroes going towards one of the Pokemon. And that's exactly what Spinel wanted, as he's able to separate them each into a box to face off against the Pokemon, and an elite of the Explorer is assigned to each person. The episode ends with Spinel setting it all up and watching like a final villain. This episode completes Charcadet's arc, and you know what? I actually liked it. This Charcadet was given a pretty decent amount of development, I think. It's originally there to protect Liko, then it trains and gets stronger and stronger, and eventually, along with her grandmother's gift to her, it allows her to evolve. This evolution to me also tells me this is probably going to be the final Pokemon that Liko gets in this series. I'm not surprised, I had a feeling that would be the case in this series. This episode also completes the arc for Liko and Amethyst. The flashback early on in the episode cemented it, but this episode really shows how much both of them has grown. Amethyst has changed a lot since his debut, and Liko has also gotten substantially stronger. It's crazy to look back that he's now helping out the hero that he tried to kidnap in the first episode. It's a full circle moment for the two characters, and is also partially the reason for Charcadet's evolution, which is the cherry on top. My only thing is that this episode feels like it came out of nowhere. I remember in the second arc, our hero spent the entire time searching for one of the explorers' place until they found it by the lighthouse. They did go through the Exceed Museum, but I wish the series would just spend a bit more time showing our heroes decoding the things from the museum instead of having a Mochi episode. I'd heard rumors a while back, and I don't know if it's true, that this series might end faster than people think, and I originally didn't believe it. But the fact that our heroes are already facing off in the Explorer's HQ makes me think, is there truth to that? That's such an endgame thing, isn't it? Of course, we know that even when they do that, they're still going to have to clear the Laquium, and that's going to be another thing. But I'm just saying, this feels like such a massive thing to do in the series if it's not supposed to end until November like people originally guessed. Overall though, I like this episode. Spinel continues to have the upper hand on our heroes, so when that eventually does flip, it's going to be a satisfying watch. Hopefully the writers can pull that off properly. I also like all the explorers being attached to individuals. Unfortunately, because Amethyst and Ult are the newest members, Indy and Rubina get them, and that has zero connections, but still, I like the distribution of battle here. Next episode seems to be very battle focused, and it's a big one. Episode 125 of Pokemon Horizons titled Get Back! The 6 Heroes just dropped. This is mainly a battle episode, so there's not much I can recap about the battles itself without just doing play-by-play, so I'll just try to summarize each fight. First, the explorers were there for seemingly no reasons, and I mean the elites. They were just there to say attack. They don't do anything interesting and they don't provide anything substantive to the episode, so that was bizarre to see. The main focus of the battles are given to Liko and Roy. The others also get a chance to shine, but not nearly as much as them. Also, all the Rising Volt tacklers are at a disadvantage, so their battles are trying to figure out how to counter that. Liko's battle against Kleavor is one where she has to spam healing on her Meowscarada from her Hatterene to keep up. The X-Scissor from Kleavor is doing a ton of damage, and eventually, Kleavor does enough damage where Liko has to use Healing Wish, which KOs Hatterene. Liko finally gets the win when she decides to Terrasilize her Meowscarada. Then, she uses Acrobatics all around Kleavor. And it's not to attack it, but to set up invisible threads. She's able to use that to wrap it up and use a giant magical leaf to KO Kleavor. Roy's battle against Galarian Moltres is one where he manages to use both of his Pokemons effectively. He remembers his advice from Drayton about not being as tense during battle, so he has his Kilowattrel run around until Roy finds an opening before attacking with Skeledirge. Skeledirge then switches to a secondary role when his Kilowattrel takes over, as Roy terrasilizes Kilowattrel and has it dive bomb a Spark from up top, which turns into a Supercell Slam. And that, with the helping of Torch Song to surround it, except in this case it's Fire Armor, hits Galarian Moltres hard enough and KOs it. Ult's battle against Gouging Fire, unlike the previous two, is a one-on-one. At first, Ult thinks that he has figured it out and he's able to do super effective damage on it with Dragonite, but he gets put in the back foot when Gouging Fire uses Ancient Power to do super effective damage to Dragonite. Before Ult remembers Lacey's advice and tries to look up Gouging Fire's moveset on his Pokedex, but since it's a Paradox Pokemon, the Pokedex doesn't have much, so Ult just goes on the reliable Mega Evolution. It's able to use Twister to catch the incoming Ancient Power sent in by Gouging Fire to send it back to Gouging Fire and KO it. Dot's battle against Arboliva is one she really struggles against. Waxwell especially takes heavy damage during this battle, as it is KO'd really early on trying to make an opening for Tinkaton to power up an attack. So afterwards, she brings out Goldengo, who's a lot more fitted to do this. With its ability to glide around, it's able to keep Arboliva distracted enough to let Tinkaton charge, then use Make It Rain to stop Arboliva's movement to allow Gigaton Hammer from Tinkaton to take it out. Amethio is battling against Lapras with his Zygarde, and that is a terrible matchup for him at the beginning. He's not doing well to the ice at all. He's just getting hit over and over again. However, eventually, his Zygarde takes enough damage to return it from the 50% form to its 10% form. That 10% form is way faster than Lapras, allowing it to get a massive advantage and eventually get behind it to use a Core Enforcer to defeat it. After everyone defeats their Pokemon, the walls collapse. Before Terrapagos can take away the Laquium, however, Vanel has the explorers use their Strong Spears once again. That to seemingly break their bond and make them forget each other. This is the one thing that our heroes were hoping to avoid, and it looks like it might be over. But Zygarde gets an idea. It transforms into its 50% form before dropping cells on the 6 hero Pokemon to stop them from fighting. Then, Terrapagos surrounds them in its bubble before showing them their pass. I said even when watching this how cool it would be if these were all from the eyes of Terrapagos, but alas, that would probably take too long in animation. So, we get a flashback of everything that the 6 hero Pokemon have done, including their adventures with Lucius and the battles with and bonds with our heroes. Liko and Roy then plead for them to remember before Terrapagos then clears the effects of the Strong Sphere. With that power, it turns into its Stellar form, which it uses to give them Terra power. And we see all the Terra types of these 6 hero Pokemon here. Remember, our heroes need all 18 types. Then, terrible acting from Spinel as he says, "We the explorers protected these Pokemon." Ult then tells him to shove it and that they'll be destroying Mount Paracarp as well, before they all leave by busting through the building. The explorers, while acknowledging the loss of the 6 hero Pokemon however, also have what they wanted, which is a recording of the battle that they're going to use for another purpose. For now, however, we see these 6 hero Pokemon on the beach talking to Zygarde before heading away to their own directions. Amethio tells them that they'll probably lend them their strength the next time they need them, which will be back in Laqua. Amethio also leaves to find more Zygarde cells in order for Zygarde to reach its 100% form. They'll also meet next time in Laqua. Meanwhile, since our heroes have the data now, our heroes are going to head back to Norana Academy. With that, they're hoping to stop the Strong Spheres from even being produced before heading to Laqua to destroy the main bit of Laquium left. However, will they? As our heroes head off, the episode ends on a different note. The purpose from the Explorer I talked about earlier, that recording, it is used by C to further demonize the Volt Tacklers as evil and stealing Pokemon and destroying property, misrepresenting what they did in order to stop their ambitions, to stop the Strong Spheres, and at the same time, use it as a promotion tool to sell the Strong Spheres to the public, and that's where we end this episode. This is a fantastic episode. Obviously, with 5 battles going on, some are going to be glossed over, and that was the case for Alt and Nemethio's battle. I wish we had gotten more, but in a 20-minute show with 15 minutes of battles, you can only do so much. I will reiterate what I mentioned earlier, which is the battle setup with the individual explorers was wasted. They didn't do anything. And this is something that one of the explorers mentions at the end of the episode, so maybe the writers have an idea with what they're going to do with that. But from the teaser last episode, I thought maybe they would have to face both the Pokemon and the trainers. Instead, the explorers are there just to be pretty faces and nothing else. That was disappointing. I'm curious to see how the ad made by Exceed at the end of the episode is going to change this series. I hope we get to see actual consequences for our heroes. I remember the first 2 episodes of Mega Voltage. Those stories revolved around the premise that the Voltaclers were seen as bad guys by the public, but that had kinda gone away over the last couple weeks. This should bring it back in the fray, and I'm curious to see how that happens. Nothing else much to say here besides that. The animation was solid, the battles we got were done well, and it progressed the story in a meaningful way. A great episode that sets up the second half of Rising Again. Episode 126 of Pokemon Horizons titled, A Battle We Can't Afford to Lose. Bonds Get Put to the Test just dropped. This episode begins with us seeing the same commercial for the Strong Spheres that ended the last episode. However, this time, it's in the context of a call. Iono is getting the commercial shown to her and a Strong Sphere given to her by Exceed for promotion. They even talk about how the Rising Voltaclers have made the world restless, and he tells her to promote it before closing the call. However, then we see that she's with the Rising Voltaclers, there in a dock in Lavencia, working on the ship to make it better. We then see that our heroes are near Narhana Academy training. That's when Dot arrives and lets our heroes know that Penny has put them through to Clavel and Gita. They're relieved because currently, due to the explorers, their reputation has been dragged through the mud, so they didn't know if they were going to get a chance. Then, they arrive at the school where we see some kids battling. Here, Nico and Rob are battling against each other as Dash is watching. Dash feels like she's too weak to battle and heads back to her room. There, she receives a package from Exceed. For helping test the Strong Sphere, she got an early version of one. She's excited to use it as this will bring her to the level of her friends. Meanwhile, Liko, Roy, Dot, and Alt are talking to Clavel, Gita, and Jock. They tell them about the research they found out. They tell them about the after effects of the Strong Spheres, causing Pokemon to lose their bonds. However, they're told that they can't really stop the release of this product, especially if they provide the evidence given to them by the Voltaclers, who currently don't have a reputation, and the fact that the Voltaclers got that information by hacking. However, they can do something little, which is banning it in the school so that the students still use it, and our heroes thank them for that. Dash then sees in the lobbies that the Strong Sphere has been banned and is disappointed. She then overhears Liko talking about it and confronts her. Liko tries to explain to her the dangers of it, but Dash says she doesn't have a Terra Orb, so this is all she has, so it's not fair. So Dash challenges her to a battle. She says if she can beat her, she'll lift a ban on it. The two face off. Dash has her Swanna, while Liko battles with her Meowscarada. Liko's the stronger trainer by far. That's made pretty obvious in the battle between the two. However, we do get to see that Dash is underrating her ability, as she and her Pokemon have great bond and are really good at battling too. This is especially noticeable when Dash has her Swanna use Feather Dance to lower Meowscarada's attack. Even her friends who are watching are surprised at her ability. However, Liko manages to have Meowscarada shake all the feathers off and use Flower Trick to take down the Swanna. Dash then sees that her friends are cheering her on and she wants to win for them, so then she pulls out the Strong Sphere and uses it on her already damaged Swanna. Liko knows she can't lose to the Strong Sphere here, and the Swanna's attacks are indeed a lot more powerful. However, it's also not listening to Dash. It's crashing and burning a lot, and that's when Dash realizes that it was a bad idea. Meowscarada eventually manages to capture Swanna before bringing it down. Dash is super apologetic to her Swanna, seeing the state of it. It's heavily damaged. She tells Liko that she was just trying not to get left behind of her friends. When her friends arrive to talk to her, Liko tells her that if she doesn't confront her feelings now, she'll regret it. So, we learned that Dash didn't pass the Terrestrial exam and was worried her friends would leave her behind. However, they didn't realize she felt that way, and they tell her that they will train and get better together. Besides, you can just keep taking the Terrestrial course over and over until you pass. Dash walks away, thanking Liko and promising never to use the Strong Sphere again. Afterwards, our heroes are in the cafeteria talking to the rest of the Voltaclers. They won't be able to stop the sale of the Strong Sphere, so the best they can do is destroy the source of the Laquium. But in order to do so, they need to fly to Mount Pericarp again. Luckily, Orla says that she's been thinking about that and is working on upgrading the ship's infinite rising mode, so now they can actually get there. Now they need to find the 6 hero level trainer slash Pokemon and the 18 Terra types of the Pokemon, and they don't know how they'll do that. Nemona and Penny arrive and jump in. Penny and Nemona both say that they can't stand to see Pokemon like this, so they want to help. This is also where our heroes finally realize that they are part of the solution. They are powerful enough now that they beat the 6th hero, and each of them have Pokemon that can terrestrialize into different types. They didn't think about themselves as being part of it. They come to the conclusion that they need to train so that they can now finally stop Laquium once and for all, and that is the end of the episode. I really like this episode. It's really realistic in its depiction of solutions of ideas. Of course, Neurona Academy can't actually do anything about this product coming out. Even in our real world, if a product comes out and a university were to come out with a study showing its negative effects, a lot of people using those products, especially if it looks like it has a lot of positive effects, are going to be reluctant to stop using it. And how people react to things being banned that they perceive to be helping them is similar to Dash's reaction here. I really like how that's shown. Our heroes realizing that they're now finally strong enough is a big revelation in the series for them. They realize they can do this. All they need is some help, and it looks like we're getting that in the form of Nemona, Penny, and Anne. This episode also did a great job with the battle. The battle against Dash was simple yet effective, and it showed that while Liko is clearly the stronger, more experienced battler, and it did a good job of showing that Dash, despite her weakness, is a good trainer. She just needs to improve her demeanor. And the episode doesn't try to make it seem like she's a bad person for using or wanting to use the strong sphere. She uses it because she wants to continue being friends with her friend, and when she uses it here and realizes her mistake, she apologizes for it and stops using it. Everyone comes out of here looking like they learned something. I can't wait to see the training we're gonna get here soon. It seems like this is the final push before our heroes go to Laqua once again for the final battle. They're going to get a little bit more stronger, and by the time they get there, they will be ready to go. And in order to do so, we're going to get lots of battles next episode. All of them look good, and I can't wait to see how all of this develops. Episode 127 of Pokemon Horizons titled Intense Training. Everyone's respective feelings just dropped. This is a training battle focused episode, and it begins with Anne arriving. She tells Liko that in the news, all she saw was people trashing the Voltacular, so she couldn't just sit there and do nothing. So when the opportunity arrived, she came here to help. Everyone goes inside and discusses their training and wanting to have a stronger bond with their Pokemon. Dot is especially thinking about this now, due to how her last battle went when her Quaxwell got obliterated. Iona is there too, and she takes our heroes to the Elite Four building. There, Gita gives them permission to use the room to train. They all split up to battle. Liko and Anne, Dot and Penny, Roy and Nemona, and when Alt is trying to find someone to battle against, the Elite Four Hassel steps up. We'll go one by one. The battle of Liko vs. Anne is Anne trying to go all out. Anne says that while she's gotten stronger, she's never gone on adventures like Liko and battle against enemies for real. She needs to know that she has that resolve. So she tells Liko to battle seriously. The battle is between Samurott and Armarouge. A Pokemon Samurott helped train early on. It's a back and forth affair with Samurott being on the offensive for the most part. Eventually, Liko terrestrializes her Armarouge and Anne responds in kind by terrestrializing her Samurott. Her Samurott is a ground terror type Pokemon. The two of them clash in an armor cannon and a drill run, and the battle ends in a tie, Anne and Liko then reaffirming their friendship towards one another. Roy's battle with Nemona is one of experience versus power. It's Nemona's Palmot versus Roy's Lucario. Nemona early on is going for Focus Punch, but from previous experience, Roy is determined not to let it happen. But Palmot is just way more experienced and is able to dodge quite frequently all of Lucario's moves. Roy then Mega Evolves as Lucario and even dodges a Mach Punch, but still, as the battle goes on, he isn't able to hit Palmot. Nemona even terrestrializes, and Nemona then has Palmot use Focus Energy. While doing so, she has Palmot parry the forces of Lucario's attacks, and by doing this, Palmot's able to maintain its concentration for Focus Punch while dodging everything, and Roy cannot land a single hit during this. Eventually, Palmot charges all the way up, and a single Focus Punch KOs Roy's Lucario. Roy is frustrated that he just isn't strong enough, but he's determined to get stronger. Alt's battle against Hassel is a masterclass in the gap between the strong trainer and the Elite Four. It's Alt's Dragonite against Hassel's Baxcalibur. I was hoping maybe we might see Mega Baxcalibur, but no dice. Hassel shows off his strength by using Protect and Blizzard to effectively paint the battlefield, trapping Dragonite in a frozen area before finishing it with a massive Glaive Rush. The most intriguing part to me though happens after the battle. Hassel compliments Alt on his fighting spirit and remarks, "It runs in the blood." This feels like a massive lore drop about Alt, right? Hassel knows about Alt's past or where he's from in some way. Alt is too focused on his loss to catch that hint though, and just says that he needs to get stronger. Finally, Dot versus Penny. This is the emotional core of the episode. Dot's Quaxwell takes on Penny's Vaporeon. From the beginning, Dot's at a disadvantage, because despite it being a water type versus water type battle, Penny's Vaporeon knows Trail Blade, a grass type move. And on top of that, when Dot does manage to get a hit in with Liquidation, she finds out that Vaporeon has Water Absorb, making her strongest water move useless. She still does a good job of dodging everything, however, until Vaporeon uses Muddy Water. Muddy Water hits Quaxwell, but it also hits Tinkaton and Goldango, and that causes Quaxwell to only use one corner of the arena so that the other two Pokemon who are watching don't get hit by another Muddy Water. So seeing this, Penny takes advantage and strikes by having Vaporeon once again attack the two non-combatant Pokemon. That causes Quaxwell to jump in front, and Penny then has Vaporeon use Trailblaze to KO Quaxwell. Dot is enraged by this and calls out Penny for attacking non-combatants, but Penny coldly responds that the explorers would have done the same thing, and Dot realizes this. She then realizes she might have been too naive and maybe depending on her Quaxwell a bit too much. That gets her down. As the day ends, everyone else leaves, all vowing to train again later, and Dot is still contemplative and doesn't even say bye to everyone. And later, that's when she drops the bomb. She tells everyone that she's stepping down from being one of the 18 Terra-type trainers. Dot frames it by calling it a safety measure to ensure the mission's success, saying she realized after today's battle that she isn't strong enough and that support is important before walking away. The episode ends with Iono, who was overhearing this, realizing that Dot might be spiraling and trying to figure something out. This is a really fun episode with a tough ending. I feel terrible for Dot. She's always felt like the strategic one, and even in this battle, she uses Ash's strategy of running up whirlpools, which is really fun to see. But despite having some of the coolest Pokemon, she also feels like the weakest one in the group. And I think the writers kind of realize that, which is why they're having her go through this arc. She's going to have to get stronger. Her dropping out for now, and most likely returning in the future, will hopefully allow her to accomplish that. The episode also corrected a lot of power scaling stuff for people who didn't like early time skip. When Roy first came on, it felt like they really wanted to hype him and his Mega Lucario up so he was able to defeat Nemona, even though he really shouldn't be able to. Nemona is legitimately one of the strongest trainers in the entire anime, so Roy being able to beat her never made sense. Here, the anime rectifies that by not only having her defeat Roy, but doing so pretty soundly. Hassel also comes off significantly strong here. Again, Ult shouldn't be as strong as an Elite Four member. He's a strong trainer no doubt, but not Elite Four level, so it was good to see the writers realize that by not really giving him much offense against Hassel. But the battle wasn't the most interesting thing to me here. Hassel's remark about Ult's bloodline is an incredibly intriguing hint. Whether it's a nod to some sort of dragon tamer family or something he just knows about Ult's past, or maybe Ult's father. I don't know if they're ever going to follow up on this, but this is really intriguing to me, and I hope this does come up in the future. I'm looking forward to this upcoming Dot development arc. What are the realizations she's going to come to? How is she going to get stronger besides just evolving her Quaxwell? How is she going to develop as a character? It's been a while since anything major happened with Dot as a character, besides her Pokemon evolving, which is more development for them than her. So I'm really curious to see how this all goes. Episode 128 of Pokemon Horizons titled Step by Step, Dot and Quaxwell just dropped. The episode begins with Roy wondering about the Black Rayquaza, which hasn't been seen in a while. The scene then cuts to the ship, where our heroes are enjoying a meal prepared by Murdoch. During the meal, Roy says that he wants to find the Black Rayquaza and let it know how they feel, especially since it's going to be such a big part of the 18 Terra type thing, and he also has the briefcase given to him by Freed that he needs to give to it. Liko then wonders if Dot is truly okay with no longer being a Terra-type trainer. Surprisingly, Ult says that he's gonna handle the situation. Meanwhile outside, Iono happens to spot Dot's Quaxwell training alongside Tinkaton and Goldango and records it. Back in the ship, Ult confronts Dot, calling her selfish for dropping out and messing up their chemistry, but Dot fires back at him. Then in walks Iono, and she says that Dot simply isn't strong enough even if she wanted to be. Iono then shows Dot a video of Quaxwell training on its own, and asks Dot how she can play a great support role when she's not even supporting her own Pokemon. She argues that she has such poor insight that her analysis is gonna be useless. Offended by the notion that she doesn't understand her partner Pokemon, Dot accepts Iono's challenge to a battle. The battle is a one-on-one between Dot's Quaxwell and Iono's Bellibolt. Bellibolt opens with a Thunder, a powerful but highly inaccurate move, but Dot has Quaxwell outspeed and dodge it. Dot then attempts to land an Aqua Cutter, but Bellibolt dodges it while charging up. Iono then feints an electric type move, only to use a Mud Shot to slow down Quaxwell. When Iono calls for Thunder again, Dot tries to have Quaxwell dodge it once again, but the Aqua Cutters from before created puddles on the floor, so even though it isn't directly hit, Quaxwell is struck by Thunder through water conduction. Dot begins to feel down on herself for once again missing this detail, but Iono calls her out. She tells Dot that the person she knows would have tried her hardest regardless of the opponent and the situation instead of just moping like this. This realization hits home to Dot. While she's been feeling discouraged, Quaxwell has been training, so she gets more into the battle. Dot remembers the video Iona showed of her and has Quaxwell use water on his feet to move faster to evade the thunder. She successfully manages to land a hit in with liquidation, and Iona prepares a counterattack. Nope. She's gonna use Slack Off. Dot notices Quaxwell has been dying to use a move, so Dot flips her headband, something we haven't seen in a while, and as Bellybolt unleashes another thunder, Dot has Quaxwell use speed to dodge through the thunder, and remembering everything that they've been through together, Dot waits for the clouds to clear before ordering a wave crash, a combination of Goldingo surfing and Tinkaton's hammer. And after the attack, Quaxwell lands, and then begins glowing blue. Quaxwell evolves into a Quaquaval. Iona then terrestrializes her Bellybolt to go all out, and Dot responds in kind. Knowing Iona probably has a trick up her sleeve, Dot uses a spinning Aqua Cutter to shut down Bellybolt's thunder, and as Bellybolt is falling from the sky, Iona feigns defenselessness, and Dot senses that's a trap, so as Quaquaval rush in, only to pull back at the last second to dodge a sucker punch. After that, one final wave crash seals the deal and knocks out Bellybolt, which means the winner is Dot. Afterwards, Dot thanks Iona, but Iona tells her that she shouldn't be thanking her. Instead, Quaquaval. Dot then goes to Liko, Alt, and Roy to tell them that while she still wants to play a support role, she also wants to be a Terra-type trainer. Everyone's thrilled, and Murdoch decides he's gonna throw a feast in her honor. After enjoying the feast and even dancing the previous night, the next morning, Liko, Roy, and Alt are all headed out towards the Dragon Shrine to meet the Black Rayquaza once again. And that's where we end this episode. This is a great character development episode for Dot. I'm not entirely sure what caused her to be so down initially. From what I could tell, the episode was suggesting she was focusing too much on herself and her own failures rather than her Pokemon, who didn't care if they lost, they just wanted to keep getting better. At some point, Dot lost sight of that. Dot isn't typically a character who does that, so this was kind of a surprising development, but a welcome one. Still, I love that it's Iona, someone that Dot looks up to as a big sister, who helps her snap out of it. The battle in this episode was also a highlight. While it wasn't overly flashy, it felt like a classic, old-school one-on-one battle packed with a bunch of strategy. Like any good match, it seesawed back and forth, culminating in a really fun finish. Now that all three of our heroes' starter Pokemons are fully evolved, the end feels closer than ever. I will say though, regarding the episode's ending, the ending is fine as long as you don't think about it too hard. From what we as a fan base know about the Pokemon world, it's basically the same as our own. So if that's the case, how are our heroes planning to fly on their Pokemon from Paldea, which is in Spain, which is where the ship currently is, all the way to the Dragon's Den, which is in Johto in Japan? That is an unbelievably long flight that would take even hours on an airplane in real life. So while them leaving makes for a fun visual, technically it makes no sense. Overall though, this was an excellent episode to set up the final few things they need to do before the inevitable final clash. Episode 129 of Pokemon Horizons, titled The Black Rayquaza. Time for the showdown just dropped. Our heroes arrive at the Dragon's Den where Rayquaza is located, with the briefcase that Freed handed them. Team Dragon Rampage arrive, the same team of bikers from episode 96. They arrive and talk to our heroes, letting them know that despite everything surrounding their names, they still trust them. Then, we learn a bit about Alt here. Alt's Dragonite fascinates the Dragon Rampagers. They question if it's his, and when Liko confirms it is indeed his, they're surprised. They're even more surprised when they see that it was caught in a Dusk Ball, and Alt says that he's had this for as far as he can remember. They laugh, saying that he was trying to be like Salt. Salt was a great underground adventurer from the Dragon Clan. They say he was a guy who famously explored the world's unknown caves by digging his own paths. His legend is full of stories like how his sheer devotion to digging once moved a group of Drillbur to tears, or the time that he battled in the Alolan Duck Trio only for them to become friends and form a Duck Quartet. When Liko suggested that might be Alt's father, they say that no way, Salt's kid has a heart-shaped mole on his butt. Turns out, it is indeed Alt, and they're even more shocked. Alt doesn't know his father much, but after hearing this, he appreciates him nonetheless for giving him the Dragonite who he's now friends with, and he lets him know by shouting into a Diglett hole. There's still so many questions surrounding Alt's father, but we'll get to that later. For now, they go inside to talk to Rayquaza. Roy talks to it, letting it know that they need its help in order to clear Laquium with Terapagos' help. They also open up the briefcase from Freed. Turns out, the thing inside is a raw meteorite. Rayquazas eat meteor, but this one's from space, so it's even better. and because of this, as Rayquaza eats it, it seems to fully heal it up. Terapagos then goes towards it and terastallizes it, showing our heroes that it wants to take them on to figure out their resolve. This time, the battle against Rayquaza is only Alt and Roy. This battle isn't flashy, but it does show the power of Rayquaza. The battle begins with Roy bringing out his Kilowattrel and Alta's Dragonite. However, that immediately changes as a Dragon Tail from Rayquaza forces out Sableye. The two Pokemon then work together as Kilowattrel dodges Dragon Pulses and Sableye uses Confuse Ray on Rayquaza, allowing Kilowattrel to get a hit in with Supercell Slam. But Rayquaza responds with a Draco Meteor, which KOs both Pokemon. With that, our two heroes then bring out their Mega Evolution capable Pokemon, Lucario and Dragonite, and Mega Evolve them. Dragonite then flies around Rayquaza to get its attention, allowing Lucario to get up close and use close combat on it. And before it can get fully hit by Dragon Pulse, Dragonite saves it. The two Pokemon then use Hyper Beam and Flash Cannon on Rayquaza, only for Rayquaza to fire back with a Draco Meteor. Since Dragonite just used Hyper Beam, it can't move, so Lucario has to use close combat to protect Dragonite from the rocks. After a bit, Dragonite's able to move, and Alt has Lucario jump off of Dragonite before using Twister from it to send back the Meteor towards Rayquaza. Rayquaza jumps out of the Twister before taking major damage. Alt thinks it might be running away, but Roy knows that a Dragon Ascent is coming, and tells Alt to prepare his defenses. The two Pokemon do, and despite trying to dodge, Lucario gets sent towards the mount before getting hit with Dragon Pulse, KOing it. Dragonite is still hanging on. Roy then brings out his Skeledirge, his final Pokemon. He has Skeledirge start off with a disarming voice which gets pushed back by Rayquaza. Skeledirge then uses Torch Song which directly hits Rayquaza despite it using Draco Meteor. There's a giant boulder hurling towards Skeledirge that it won't be able to dodge, but it's saved by Mega Dragonite, who uses Dragon Rush to save Skeledirge, and because of that, it takes recoil damage and KOs itself. So now, it's a one-on-one, as Alt tells Roy to focus on the battle despite him being sad that he's lost. Roy then terastallizes Skeledirge, powering it up. Rayquaza then uses Dragon Tail on it, but since it's Roy's last Pokemon, it stays in the battlefield. Roy then has Skeledirge use the hole on the side of the mountain to use Disarming Voice to amplify it. Rayquaza then goes in the air for another Dragon Ascent, and Roy knows that this is going to be the final move. He has Skeledirge first use Torch Song as Dragon Ascent Rayquaza is coming down to slow it down. Skeledirge then grabs it, digging its heels in before using Flamethrower directly in front of it. The Terra Boost plus the full power Flamethrower at close range does enough damage, and Rayquaza is KO'd. Afterwards, Roy pulls out his Pokeball, and Rayquaza gives him the nod, allowing him to capture it, which means Roy's goals from the beginning of the series are now fulfilled. He thanks everyone for allowing this to take place. Alt, who's quietly crying in the corner, congratulates Roy in his own way, saying Rayquaza suits Roy. Roy then brings out Rayquaza, and Terapagos shows it all of the other 6 hero Pokemon and what's gone on so far. After this, Roy gives it a nod as Rayquaza flies away. As he explains to Alt, it's leaving to gather the others so that when the time comes, they'll be ready for battle. As the sun goes down on the day, Team Dragon Rampage tells Alt that if they ever meet Salt, they'll let him know. But Alt says no need, as his own legend will reach his father some days. As our heroes head back towards presumably Paldea, Liko worries for Alt, but he's determined to start his own legend and is fully energetic, and that's where we end this episode. A really fun episode with some needed backstory for Alt. It's interesting, as I record this in Pokemon Day, we know that Winds and Wave won't be out for another year, and as I made a short about it a couple days ago, there's a rumor that the anime was extended because of this change. I don't know how early in the pipeline the anime writers knew about this development, but it feels like originally they weren't planning on this series being around much longer. It feels like they weren't really planning on discussing Alt's lineage. However, now they're diving into it, and they purposely made him another explorer type so that it has a connection with the current team. Because of this, I wonder if they're going to change their original plans and somehow connect Alt's father to the original adventurers, or are they going to keep it a separate thing, allowing Alt to have a backstory without affecting the overall story. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. This delay from the game also explains why something I talked about a while back seems to have happened, which is that because the writers weren't originally planning on the series being around longer, so Roy accomplishing his goal this early feels really interesting. Similar to when Go caught the Suicune, it won't be a part of his active team, which keeps Roy from being too powerful. But it also ends Roy's story and puts him in a weird state of limbo for the rest of the series until the climax battle, whenever that may be. I'm really curious to see how they plan on navigating that. With how Alt ends his episode here saying he wants to make his own legend, it seems like they're going to shift the focus of the story now on him. And I wonder what that means. He'll probably get another Pokemon, as 2 is just not enough, even Dot has 3. so that's probably going to be his next major advancement. Try to guess in the comments which Pokemon he might get. Let's see if you get it right. With a major part of the anime's original goals for our heroes now ending here, I'm fascinated to see how the series is going to advance. What is it going to do to keep itself from feeling stuck or fillery? I guess only time will tell. Episode 130 of Pokemon Horizons titled Hamber on the Night of the Blood Moon just dropped. This episode has a lot of backstory and future story that makes me think that the final fight might go differently than I anticipated. The episode begins with the release of the Strong Sphere as a product. It's super popular and everywhere as Dot is watching people use it and do battles. It's already changing the perception of battles for people as we see a kid give up on his Pokemon for losing the battle and say he's gonna get a stronger Pokemon. This is all while Spinel is watching clips with calls in the headquarters. However, he is told that Narana Academy already banned the Strong Sphere due to the influence of the Voltaclers. So while Spinel knows that they can't really stop the Strong Sphere as a product itself, he does say to put more security at Mount Paracarp. As Calls goes to go do that, Spinel lets her know he is proceeding with that matter. We're gonna find out what this is later. As Dot was discreetly watching everyone in Lavencia battle with the Strong Sphere, she then gets a message on her phone, which causes her to go back. That's because Roy, Liko, are back. The rest of the crew is also waiting on them, and they all congratulate Roy on catching Rayquaza. He lets them know that it's going to call the other 6 hero Pokemon, which is why it's not there, so for now, they all just need to prepare. Back inside the ship, Dot explains that the Strong Spheres are being used everywhere, and that they're having a greater effect than even she anticipated. The only way for them to stop the product is to stop the Laquium core. So, they try to figure out all the Pokemon they have that are eligible to be able to go do that. So far, they have, starting with the 6 hero Pokemon, Arboliva for normal, Galarian Moltres for dark, Lapras for ice, Kleavor for bug, Gouging Fire for rock, and Rayquaza for dragon. Then they have their own Pokemon, Grass for Meowscarada, Psychic for Hatterene, Fire for Skeledirge, Electric for Kilowattrel, Cap is flying, Quaquaval is water, and Tinkaton is steel. Then for the rest, they have everyone else helping them. So that's Penny Sylveon with Fairy, Nemona's Palmot with fighting, and Samurott with ground, Ametio's Ceruledge with ghost, and when they're trying to think of poison, Diana's Petulant comes to mind. That covers all 18 types and the trainers that our heroes need to get together. And this time, they're fully determined to erase the Laquium for good. They also say that Diana's at the old castle, so they'll be visiting her soon. Back at Mount Paracarp, the 3 admins of the Explorers are all there, doing some security work when they spot Hamber. He implores his former students to stop Spinel, as Laquium will sever the bonds of people with their Pokemon. While they say he's gonna get stronger off of it, Hamber reminds them that they are trainers. And we get a shot of their wrist, something that we'll come back to later. We even go back to the moment in episode 125 where Sidian and Coral are bored because they didn't do anything in battle. However, Calls stops at and says that they have to deal with traitors, and this is where we learn the backstory for the villains. When Calls says that she'll do anything to reach her goal, Hamber points out that it's hypocritical because she's a teacher. Teachers are meant to help people, not hurt them, and her goal is to establish a school back in her hometown. The 3 explorers then bring out their Pokemon, so Hamber brings out his Dusknoir and Rotom. He then immediately terrestrializes Dusknoir. Coral and Sidian then use the Strong Sphere on their Pokemon. The 2 Pokemon attack, but Hamber has his Pokemon avoid most of the attacks. The only person not to use a Strong Sphere, Calls, is the only one able to get hits on Dusknoir while Hamber's Pokemon are attacking. However, just then, Hamber has Dusknoir use Trick Room to change the battle complexion. Dusknoir is able to then attack faster and gets all the Pokemon down. That's when finally Calls decides to use her Strong Sphere to change the tide of battle. The difference here is that unlike everyone else who uses a Strong Sphere, Calls seems to be able to, for the most part, command her Pokemon while using the Strong Sphere. She's able to have Medicham use Calm Mind to dodge attacks in Trick Room, and when Trick Room ends, the Calm Mind power is used for offense as it attacks and KOs both of Hamber's Pokemon in one shot. But before he got KO'd, Dusknoir had used Haze, and turns out that was to allow his final Pokemon to come out. That Pokemon is able to attack in the dark using Moonblast, and Coral has her Glalie self-destruct to clear out the haze. That KOs Garganacl in the process, but Calls is able to have Medicham dodge it. Turns out that Pokemon is Blood Moon Ursaluna, a Pokemon Hamber was able to capture in Kitakami. Hamber once again implores the 3 to remember when they joined the Explorers, and a flashback shows us all of their stories prior to joining the Explorers. Coral and Sidians were battlers who people wouldn't battle because they were too ruthless, and Hamber promised them a space where they could battle and improve and go wild. Calls, on the other hand, is slightly different, as she was a school teacher of a school in a poor neighborhood that got shut down due to lack of funding. Hamber promised her an opportunity to earn her way up and make her dreams come true. Calls says Medicham attack again, but it's sent back. That's when she pulls out her trump card. I talked earlier about the show zooming in on the Explorer's wrist, and this is why. Calls shows that she can Mega Mega Evolve her Pokemon. Mega Evolution requires a lot of Bond, which also explains why she's able to control her Pokemon despite the effects of the Strong Sphere. And with Mega Evolution on top of the power boost from the Strong Sphere, she's able to find Ursaluna's weakness. Then, using its psychic power to dodge Blood Moon, Medicham uses Axe Kick in order to KO Ursaluna. Calls sees how much of a burden the combination of the Strong Sphere and Mega Evolution put on her Pokemon, and Hamber tells them that surely they can see it too. But at this point, the battle is over, so Hamber and Ursaluna escape. He says that he's leaving the rest to Amethio. The next morning, we see Freed leave Devincorp as he says they've been really helpful, and he calls back to the team saying that he needs to do another errand before he returns back. As everyone is talking, getting excited to get going soon, Liko looks around and is determined not to let the Strong Sphere steal the bonds of people and Pokemon anywhere. And that is the end of the episode. A few different things were set up in this episode, so let's go through it. The main players involved in the Laquium battle have now been determined. The 18 Pokemon who are going to be involved have been established, the different trainers have been chosen, and our heroes are planning to go back to Galar to meet with Diana again. So lots of stuff happening on the hero side. Similarly, this episode also established the motivations for the villain side. Coral and Sidian's motivation aren't the most flashy, they just want to be strong in battle. But Calls here is the most interesting one. Her being a former teacher in a poor neighborhood and using the explorers as a way to set up a school in her home is a goal that makes her a more complex character, especially since she's Spinel's right hand. It also kind of tells us about how manipulative Spinel was or is, because he was probably able to learn about her and get her to join his side super early in this series. And now, despite being the CEO of one of the biggest corporations in the anime, he's still holding that dream as a carrot on a stick when, as the CEO, he can easily make her dreams come true. It's also established, subtly, that all three of the explorers had Mega Rings. They showed Pulse, obviously, but the show zooming into all three of the explorers when Hamber talks about them having bonds as trainers was a hint not only at what Pulse did, but what the other two can also do. Most likely, a Mega Glalie and a Mega Aerodactyl as the other two surprise ace. The idea that Hamber brings up about the bonds breaking for Pokemon is fascinating because it's true. They are all trainers who clearly care about their Pokemon and they battle with them all the time. And yet they're all, despite their own goals, okay with supporting Spinel's vision. Spinel isn't a fighter, so it's not going to affect him as much. But I could see a future, and maybe this is just speculation, where people use the Strong Sphere so much that they can't even Mega Evolve their Pokemon. And that would be a remarkable turn. If it happens to the villain, maybe that's going to force them to look at what they're doing differently. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it won't happen, but Hamber giving the speech didn't just feel like time filler. It felt like it was going to be important in the series moving forward. I guess we'll just have to wait and see if I'm right. As far as the episode itself, I really like the battle we got. It showed how strong Calls is, showing why Dot always seems to struggle against her. It showed how Hamber was able to train everyone, and it also interesting to me that they gave him a Blood Moon Ursaluna, an unbelievably strong Pokemon. Typically, these Pokemon are saved for one of our heroes, so it's funny that they gave it to someone who's probably not going to be involved in the final battle. So many things established in this episode that if you told me that the series was ending soon, I would believe it. But with the games being announced for 2027, fascinating to see how they progress the story moving forward. Episode 131 of Pokemon Horizons titled, The Time Has Come. Gather Companions just dropped. This episode feels like it exists to introduce all the characters who are going to be involved in the battle to destroy Laquium to each other. And we get introduced to two more characters who are going to be involved in seemingly the aftermath of the battle. As our heroes are waiting for Freed to arrive, YS and Perrin arrive instead. They met each other at some point and became friends through their connection with our heroes. If you don't remember who they are, YS was a former Voltacular. He first showed up in episode 76 as the guy who writes the Occulture magazines, and Perrin was involved in our heroes' battle against Cleavor. They, despite all the stories out in public about our heroes, believe in them and want to get the truth out. Then our heroes hear the door again, expecting Freed, but this time it's Nimona, Anne, and Penny. This allows everyone to meet everyone, while Freed is making his way back. As Freed is making his way back, he feels like someone is following him, and he's right. So he ducks into an alley before flying away in his Charizard. He goes to a bar to meet Yanga, one of the research buddies from his time in Exceed. Yanga, who debuted in episode 54, tells Freed that Spinel, as the director, has cancelled all research except for Laquium ones. After hearing this, Freed shows him the research he's been doing in space. Yanga's shocked to hear that, and at first, Yanga declines to help because he's afraid to disobey the director. However, he eventually musters up the courage to help, remembering that helping Pokemon is the reason he joined Exceed in the first place. He tells Freed that he'll assist him and try to do something that benefits the world. Freed, seeing his determination, hands over his research to him. Once he comes outside, outside of the bar, he's ready to face off against the guy tailing him. Back in Lavencia, while everyone is socializing with each other, Liko reflects on everything that led up to this moment and thinks about how this is what the truth is. Then they hear Fried's voice outside and the door knocks again. They open it, and it's Mayonnaise. Yep, the same Mayonnaise that gave Roy and Alt their Mega Rings. Oh, and also Fried is here. Mayonnaise and Fried explain how they met. Mayonnaise was looking for Roy and Alt when he came across the Mega Starmie and got distracted. Then he found out that Fried was friends with Roy and Alt, so here he is. So why is he here? He knows that our heroes are fighting for the world, so he bought Roy a new Mega Stone. It's Lucario Knight Z, and he wants to see if Roy can master it and put it to use. So they decide to have a battle. Mayonnaise brings out his Hawlucha and Roy his Lucario. Mayonnaise's Hawlucha loves to show off. That much is clear. It's a battle with a lot of taunting until Mayonnaise gets serious. After Mayonnaise Mega evolves his Hawlucha, Roy tries to have Lucario use close combat on it, but it barely does anything. Instead, Mayonnaise takes that attack head on and fully turns it against Roy by having Hawlucha use Encore. This causes Lucario to only be able to use close combat. Not only does that limit what attack Roy can use, but when Roy tries to Mega evolve his Lucario, he can't. And that's because Lucario and him are out of sync due to Encore causing Lucario to be panicked that his moves aren't doing anything. So because of that, Roy is forced to use close combat with no other options, and that ultimately leads to his downfall as Hawlucha uses Flying Press to KO Lucario, which means the winner is Mayonnaise. Afterwards, Mayonnaise tells Roy that his current style of wave guidance isn't strong enough, basically Lucario's aura power, and that if he wants to beat Mega Hawlucha, Roy is going to have to master it. Roy, while frustrated he lost, is also willing to learn, so he asks for Mayonnaise's help in getting stronger. Later, the ship's upgrades are finished. Our heroes thank Iono for all her help, and she says that's no big deal, they can just repay her by doing a collab stream with Nidothing. As our heroes leave, with the upgraded Brave Olivine flying by, even the students in Narana Academy who think the Rising Volt Tacklers are trouble can't help but think that the ship is cool. And as the teachers of Narana Academy watch our heroes fly away, the episode ends with our heroes heading towards Diana's castle. This is a very important episode. I thought that when the episode ended, it felt strange that everyone gathered together only for them to leave in the ship and then we didn't see anyone, but the next episode preview makes it look like everyone who gathered today is also in that ship, which if that's the case, this episode is a much bigger deal than we think. It never works out this way, so maybe I shouldn't get my hopes up, but if everyone is on that ship, the potential for interactions with so many combination of people there is almost endless. I really hope the writers can execute on this. As far as the battle itself, I liked it. The pacing felt awkward, yes, but I think that was intentional. It showed how swiftly the tide can turn in battle, and Roy felt like he went from having an advantage to basically zero chance within a matter of moments, and that was really well done. I like that the writers wanted a way to have everyone that's going to be involved in the final battle meet each other without having to make individual episodes. Having this episode here where everyone gathers together and socializes in the background while we don't see it, it's a good enough explanation. It is interesting to me that they brought a cameraman and a journalist. It makes a lot of sense. You need to have evidence once you save the world. Is it going to work out the way they will though? I guess time will tell. I guess we'll have to see if Perrin and YS can change the entire world's perception of our heroes. I find it interesting that Roy's getting a Mega Z here. Unlike the games where Mega Evolution is on a time limit, the anime's Megas can Mega until the battle ends, and Z Megas in the games are inherently stronger than regular Megas but last way less. So I'm curious to see how they're going to approach it. Is it just going to be an upgraded Mega at all costs, or is there going to be some downsides to using a Z Mega compared to using a regular Mega? And with Roy getting a Z Mega here, I also wonder if Alt will get a new Pokemon soon. He doesn't have to get a Z Mega, but it feels like he needs to get another Mega Pokemon just to keep up with Roy. I guess we'll see if they decide to do that. I will say, the next episode being another training episode after last episode being another training episode really feels like the writers had to extend their original plans, and here you can really feel it. The story doesn't really adjust well here. There's been a lot of build up over the last few episodes, only for next episode to go straight back to training. I like training episodes, I'm not complaining, but it's just something I noticed, and I wonder if the games being delayed had something to do with it. I'll be interested to see if we're going to the Mount Pericarp battle directly after Diana, or will something else happen to extend it. Episode 132 of Pokemon Horizons titled Rematch, a challenge for Lucario just dropped. This episode begins with our heroes heading to Diana's castle. They arrive there to ask her to join them on their quest to Laquium, since they'll need more 18 Terra-type trainers. Specifically, they have a feeling that her Pecharunt might be a Poison-type Terra, so when Terrapagos gives it Terra energy to test, that theory is confirmed to be true. We even get a funny moment here where Freed, who doesn't actually know much about Petrant and hasn't experienced it, eats the mochi despite being told by everyone not to, and ends up being stuck doing the mochi dance. Our heroes aren't immediately leaving for Laqua, so this gives Roy some time to train with Lucario. He still can't Mega Evolve yet despite trying, so while everyone else decides to have a look around the castle, Roy decides to train with Lucario by himself. As he's trying to figure out what to do and Lucario is pushing himself hard, Roy sees his Pokemon relaxing and decides to do the same. He tells Lucario to come on and relax. He reflects on their time together so far, meeting it at first as the Yellow Blast before Mega Evolving and becoming partners with it. He then tells it that it needs to relax and maybe even sing. He starts singing with his Pokemon and eventually Lucario jumps in. And I really like this entire bit. This connects back to his previous training he did with Drayton, and it's good to see that training paid off. He tells Lucario not to rush it and that they'll figure it out together. However, he then hears Alt's training. He goes downstairs and asks what's happening, and he finds out that Alt is training with Mayonnaise and Diana by doing drills. He's trying to get his Mega Sableye gem to be faster and stronger so he can defend anything, and through this training, he shows that he's gotten significantly stronger. When Roy compliments him, Alt says that he's got to get stronger because he never knows what's going to show up in Laqua. They've got to be able to use all sorts of fighting style, and this resonates with Roy and his Lucario, who also felt something while watching that training. Mayonnaise then tells Roy that he's up next in training, and that just thinking won't do him any good. He needs to actually do hand-to-hand combat to try to break through this. But this time, he wants everyone's help. To do what? This is not just your regular rematch / training here. This is a full-on wrestling production. Murdoch, Freed, and Diana doing commentary, the Pokemon helping with the entrance. The entire production is lavish. Then, the battle begins. Mayonnaise immediately Mega Evolves his Hawlucha. Roy starts off with Metal Claw, and just like last time, Hawlucha takes the attack fully before using Encore, forcing Lucario to only be able to use Metal Claw. But this time, Roy has learned from his previous mistakes, so he tells Lucario to relax, and instead of going for the attack, he tells Lucario to use his aura the way he sees fit. Lucario changes his stance and for a while does nothing but dodge and parry attacks. Nemono explains to Liko that Lucario is concentrating the aura in its body into its arms and legs to increase its defensive power on the moment of impact. And the reason it can do that is because Roy is reading Hawlucha's movements and telling it exactly how to dodge, so Lucario can just focus entirely on dodging and the flow of aura. The two are almost in perfect sync. Then, Roy has Lucario counterattack with Metal Claw, and it does damage to Hawlucha, causing it to stagger and go down. This sequence makes Roy feel like he is one with Lucario now. So, he goes for it. He tries Mega Evolution, and this time, it works, as Lucario begins Mega Evolving. It Mega Evolves into a Mega Lucario Z. Mayonnaise is proud seeing the Mega Evolution, so he then begins going on the offensive, having Hawlucha use Acrobatics. However, it just cannot land a single bit of damage, as Lucario is moving like water and dodging everything. Then, it counters with a powerful Metal Claw, sending it flying in the air before rushing in with more. And during that process, Lucario learns a new move, Aerial Ace, as it sends Hawlucha to the ground. When Hawlucha tries to attack further, Roy has Lucario use Aerial Ace once again, and during the process, it is so fast that people cannot see Lucario. They think it's invisible. Mayonnaise sees that things are going bad for him, that while he's holding guard right now, it's going to eventually break. So he has Hawlucha back up and take the high ground. He then has Hawlucha use Flying Press, and Roy tries to counter with Flash Cannon. However, Hawlucha manages to dodge in midair and get in a hit on Lucario. It then uses its powerful wings to send Lucario in the air and to the floor before going for another Flying Press. But just as it's about to hit, Roy has Mega Lucario use Aerial Ace to counter that. Then, it finishes it off with Aerial Ace and even does a People's Elbow for good measure. And that final attack seems to have done the trick, as Hawlucha has been KO'd, which means this time, the winner is Roy and Lucario. Everyone is happy for Roy. Mayonnaise sees how much Roy has grown, and the same with Freed. The next morning, Mayonnaise is heading off. Roy and Alt thank him for the training and making them stronger, and he tells them to continue to pursue Mega Evolution. He says he's going to leave this area and spread Mega Evolution in his travel. So, that's that. As our heroes get back on the ship, they begin driving in the morning, and the episode ends with our heroes heading to Laqua. This is a really good episode. I really like that it combined Roy's previous training with Drayton to change his approach to things in general. It's really paid off. The idea of relaxing in order to actually get stronger, because you're able to focus better, is a good lesson. And here, it's used to completely change Lucario's fighting style, more than likely for good moving forward. It's no longer going to be your standard Lucario that just battles head to head. Instead, the way this episode showed it, this Lucario can almost make moves like Ultra Instinct. If you watch Dragon Ball, you know what that is. So I'm glad we can see that here. And it finally differentiates Roy's Lucario from all the other Lucarios in the history of the animes, besides just being shiny. And the way they did it through battle, I really loved it. The battle in this episode was really different and memorable compared to other anime battle. It wasn't your standard back and forth. Instead, most of the battle was just Lucario playing defense, but when it got its attacks in, it was strong, powerful, and swift. If this is how it's going to battle moving forward, and I really hope it does, this Lucario is going to be very memorable moving forward. I really like the way they showed how this Z Mega is different from just regular Mega Lucario. A brilliantly done battle. With this episode ending with everyone ready to go to Laquia, I was kind of actually shocked to see that our heroes are heading to Laquia. And that next episode preview showing that the battle is going to begin almost felt like it came out of nowhere despite all of the build up to it. As far as this episode, I was wondering if they were ever going to show Ult getting stronger, and I guess this episode does a good job of that. He's able to keep up with Diana and Mayonnaise. Although I do wish we got to see a bit more because he's been sidelined as a character for a while. But he'll probably be majorly involved in this upcoming battle, so hopefully we get to see how strong he truly is. Now, this has been a conversation more and more recently, so I want to hear what you guys think about it, but the only thing I'm worried about in this upcoming final battle is ironically Liko. I'm aware that the entire first half of Horizons was about her, so I don't mind her not being the spotlight character in this time skip at all. That's not my issue. It does feel like though, the writers are completely ignoring her as a battler. Her only growth during this time skip has been catching an evolving Charcadet, and while that's kind of a big deal, she hasn't really changed besides that. Everyone else has felt like they've gotten significantly stronger, or progressed in meaningful ways as characters. The next episode preview really reinforced that idea to me when I see that all three of the explorers now have Mega Evolution. I know that they hinted at that a couple episodes ago, but the more I think about it, it makes no sense to me. Yes, like Amber said, they're trainers and they do genuinely care about their Pokemon, but the way that they've been shown to treat their Pokemon, flagrantly using things like their strong spheres in almost every battle, which is something that's supposed to erode the trust between Pokemon and humans, and them still being able to Mega Evolve despite all that feels so out of place. So seeing that in comparison to Liko not even getting a Mega Evolution, despite probably being the character with the deepest bonds with her Pokemon, just feels so strange to me. I'm not sure what they can do here. She's obviously not catching another Pokemon before this final battle, but just seeing everyone surrounding her in the series have Mega Evolution and get stronger while she just kind of stands there, I don't know. I hope the writers can figure out a way to give her character a satisfactory resolution. But besides that, I'm really looking forward to this upcoming battle. Episode 133 of Pokemon Horizons titled Towards the Final Fight just dropped. The Rising Voltacklers begin their operation to get rid of Laquium as the episode begins with them heading to Laquia. They talk about the plan inside the ship. The plan is as follows. The group will split in two. Roy, Freed, and Ult will take to the skies to cause the most distraction possible, while the others will go on a different direction to go towards the Laquium core. As our heroes arrive at Mount Pericarp, Spinel calls the rest of the explorers to intercept them. The people who live below the village also see them and begin talking about how much of a disaster they'll bring. But Yuha, a returning character, calls out all the villagers on not even knowing who they are and says he believes in them. Our heroes begin their plan as Freed, Roy, and Ult start flying in. From the clouds to intercept them come Sidian and Coral on their Pokemon. However, instead of engaging in a fight, the three go somewhere else. The rest of the heroes are walking through Laquia. It turns out the entire explorer's talking point that they would help restore Mount Pericarp was a total lie, as the mountain, according to Liko, looks like it hasn't changed from the last time. However, while heading inside, they begin getting attacked by dark pulses. Dot, Penny, and Nimona tell Liko to go forward as they will take care of it. So Liko, Anne, and Diana head forward while the three decide to stay back to fight. They eventually figure out that these Pokemon that are attacking them are Runarigus and Cofagrigus. Penny and Nimona attack right away, but Penny tries to stop them as it seems too easy. And she's right. Turns out these Pokemon are using Destiny Bond. These Pokemon are being controlled by India and Rubina. They're getting our heroes into a bind because they know about the idea that our heroes need to have all their Pokemon. So they're using Curse and Mean Look to whittle away at all of our heroes' Pokemon. Because if they can just knock out one of the 18 type Pokemon needed, then they'll win. So So Dot's Goldingo instead decides to help the entire team out by using Make It Rain on all of the Pokemon at once to take out all of them and take on the Destiny Bond attack. It seems like a noble sacrifice, however then we find out that India and Rubina have way more of these Pokemon. And now this is a real problem, as our heroes cannot afford any more Pokemon going down. But that's when out of nowhere, help arrives. It's Hamber. He has his Dusknoir and Blood Moon Ursaluna stop the Pokemon from attacking, which allows Penny and Nemona time to attack them when they don't have Destiny Bond active, allowing our heroes to KO them. After everyone's down, our heroes thank Hamber for his help. They talk about where Hamber found this Pokemon, but before the conversation can continue, more of the Explorer's grunts arrive. Hamber tells the three to continue on ahead, as he will take on all the other grunts. Then we see the other battle from earlier. Freed, Roy, and Alt land somewhere far away as they wanted Sidian and Coral to be distracted from the others. But Calls also arrives, teleporting in on Xatu. Our heroes tell them that they won't show off strategy either when they notice that Sidian is using his Aerodactyl and not his Garganacl. They instead bring out all their Pokemon that can Mega Evolve and aren't part of the 18 Terra-type ritual. They Mega Evolve them, however, to our heroes' surprise, the Explorers do the exact same thing, and each of them Mega Evolve their Pokemon. The battle here is a lot of dodging and protecting each other, as Instructor Starmie manages to protect Sableye when he loses his gem, and Sableye does the same back to Instructor Starmie, who blocks Sheer Cold. The battle doesn't come to a definitive close, and the episode ends as Liko, Anne, and Diana come close to where the Laquium core is located. I'm not gonna lie, I was really disappointed in this episode. The story beats are fine. I even really like the use of weak Pokemon plus Destiny Bond to stop our heroes. It's a smart strategy that I've never seen before, and it really made our heroes fight from the back foot. Despite me questioning how in the world Coral and Sidian managed to get Mega Evolution last episode still not being answered, I still like their battle here, because it really feels like it's the top 3 trainers going at it, unlike other 3v3 battles where it's a lot of 1v1v1. This one really felt like it's a 3v3, as multiple Pokemon are having to work together to keep each other safe. I really enjoyed that. Story can be good, but it all falls apart because of the art and animation in this episode. This was a really poor episode in regards to visual. The motion felt stilted and stiff, the moves felt like they lacked any impact, and even the art felt subpar. And that's especially disappointing to see in the episode for the finale of the arc. Even the Mega Evolutions for the Explorers for their Pokemon felt so standard. The art direction felt stilted, and it's just so disappointing that at this point in the series, when we're heading to the climax, this show is still seemingly dealing with production issues. Hopefully, they can pick it up for the final upcoming 2 episodes of this arc. Episode 134 of Pokemon Horizons, titled The Ultimate Showdown Mega Evolution, just dropped. The battle begins with the continuation of the battle between the Mega Pokemon between our heroes and the 3 Explorers. At the start of the episode, our heroes are on the back foot. Instructor Starmie is getting hit by Aerodactyl, Sableye is being chased around by Glalie. Meanwhile, Roy's Lucario, engaging in hand-to-hand combat against Mega Medicham, does so until it gets hit by Blizzard, which freezes its hands. However, Alt comes up with a strategy while Sableye is being chased around. He has Sableye turn around and deflect the Blizzard from Glalie into multiple directions. After Freed confirms with Alt that he has a plan, he has Instructor Starmie charge up a Psybeam. Alt has Sableye use Confuse Ray to stop Mega Aerodactyl and Mega Glalie. That's when the ice that Alt made earlier comes into play, as he reflects the Confuse Ray light off the ice, which confuses the 2 Pokemon. Glalie then gets hit by Psybeam, but Aerodactyl manages to escape. Alt has Starmie fire its Psybeam at Sableye's gem, which allows him to reflect it into the sky and hit Aerodactyl. Roy then has Lucario calm down and uses Aura to utilize his ear flaps as arms instead of hands. It works, and he's able to get Medicham to break guard. When Calls has Medicham counter with Zen Headbutt, Roy has Lucario take the attack head on, and it breaks the ice in his hands. This allows him to respond with Aerial Ace, which does super effective damage against Medicham, especially as it goes out of Mega Evolution right at that moment. Coral and Sidian are having a blast in this battle. They realize that they're actually having fun battling after a very long time. Coral responds with a massive self-destruct. Azul tries to get Sableye to protect everyone, since self-destruct doesn't damage ghost-type moves. It's only Freed who realizes what's about to happen and has Instructor Starmie jump in front of everyone to take on the massive self-destruct. And that's because Glalie's ability is Refrigerate, which turns all moves into ice types, meaning Sableye would have also gotten hit. The explosion takes out Mega Aerodactyl, Glalie itself, and Sidian tells our heroes that they lost because they didn't have as good of a bond with their Pokemon due to their use of Laquium. They knew that when they fought Hamber. That's also why Calls' Medicham lost its Mega in the middle of battling. However, Calls isn't willing to give up yet. She sees her Medicham still willing to fight for her, and gives her a strong sphere. Roy says he will take her on. He says that she doesn't understand her Pokemon, as Medicham didn't want the strong sphere, she just wanted to battle with Calls, the trainer. Roy says that he won't lose to someone using the strong sphere because the strong sphere inherently makes you fight alone, and he has a bond with his Pokemon as they're fighting together. So a final aerial ace is able to knock it out for good, and our three heroes head on their way. The second half of the episode follows Liko, Diana, and Anne as they discover where the Laquium is being produced. As they arrive, so do Omithio, Zerk, and Onia. Spinel is watching from afar via webcam and has the diggers to dig up Laquium, agitate the Laquium to create more of it. That causes massive clouds of Laquium to spill into the area. As the core grows larger, it begins spreading the Laquium mist everywhere in the forest, which causes all the wild Pokemon in the area to go crazy. Cap breaks through where the workers are, and they initially want to battle our heroes, but they see too much fighting between the wild Pokemon affected by the Laquium, so they choose to retreat. Liko says for now, all they can do is try and calm down the Pokemon. They use their other Pokemon to intervene into the battle. Zerk has Rhydon then use Sandstorm, and Sandslash uses Sand Attack to get them to stop fighting, but that's only partially working. So Liko brings out her Meowscarada and Hatchram, a risky move, but they're able to use their Aroma and healing abilities to help the Pokemon calm down, and it seems to work. However, that's just the first wave, as Spinel has the machines agitate the Laquium core even more. Our heroes realize what's happening, so Cap, along with Terapagos, flies in to destroy it, while our heroes' Pokemon try to calm down the Pokemon even more. Pokemon then randomly arrive from the ground attacking our heroes, knocking a few Pokemon out in the process and stopping the Sandstorm. Meanwhile, while the Pokemon on the ground can be helped, the Pokemon in the air cannot, and that's when Omethio calls for his grandfather's Zygarde cores, and it seems to work. These are the same cores that broke up after the battle last time, and they stuck around in Laqua. The cores come together and create Zygarde perfect form. Zygarde is able to stop all the Pokemon in the air from fighting and bring them down to our heroes, who catch them. Meanwhile, Cap manages to destroy all of the agitation machines. Afterwards, Terapagos absorbs all the Laquium, and Zygarde uses its cells to move all the Pokemon out to safety. Once everything has seemingly calmed down, everyone else arrives, and they're all excited that they all made it through. Meanwhile, down at the village, the residents are also being affected by the Laquium mist, and there are Pokemon there also fighting each other. However, who better to calm down the Pokemon than Mighty G? He arrives and manages to calm down the Pokemon there, and the village elder there recognizes him as a legendary hero, which shocks everyone in the village. Then, the rest of the Voltacular crew lends a helping hand to the weakened Pokemon, who Molly is helping using Healing Pulse, and Mousehold using Tidy Up to clean up the mist in the area, as well as the villagers' Pokemon to make sure they're okay. And this gesture seems to make people in the village realize that the Rising Voltaculars might not be the bad guys they thought they were. We head back to Laqua, where Spinel is out there now, and our heroes are ready to stop him. They bring out all of the Pokemon they need to, and not only that, Terapagos calls out to the sky, which is when the rest of the 6 hero Pokemon, including Shiny Rayquaza, arrives. The episode ends with all 18 Terra-type Pokemon and their trainers gathering to stop the Laquium as a final battle is about to take place. This is a really good episode. Let's go through it one by one. They finally addressed the thing I'd been speculating about since early Horizons, the idea that Coral and Sidian weren't really that much into the strong spheres, and they vocalized it here. Not only that, but the point I talked about in the battle against Hamber was also paid off. I talked about how it made no sense that the explorers could use strong spheres and Mega Evolution, and this episode addresses that by having Colossus Medicham lose its Mega Evolution in the middle of battle. Sidian then admits that their Mega Pokemon aren't as strong due to their lack of bond, and in a fun twist, Roy is the one to teach the teacher about Pokemon and their bonds. All of it was done extremely well. The battle sequence was fine in terms of art and animation, but I don't think this episode was really about that. I think they really wanted the story to carry this episode, and it does that. It answers a lot of questions that I had for a while in a satisfactory way. The long sequence about calming down the Pokemon was probably the weakest part of this episode, but I understand why it needed to be done. They needed a reason to remove as many of the Pokemon that aren't part of the main battle as possible in order to allow the final battle to have stakes. Now, our heroes have to keep all other Pokemon from fainting, because even if one faints, they lose. So, while it was a bit strange, from a story perspective, I get it. I also like the fact that the other Rising Voltaculars are doing stuff now. They aren't just sitting around the ship doing nothing. And I like that this is leading to people changing their minds about the Voltaculars, a major theme since the time skip happened. The show really doesn't touch on it as much as I think it should, but anytime it does, it feels like the show has great continuity. Now, with all the Pokemon there, the final showdown is about to start. In episode 135 of Pokemon Horizons titled Awakening, the Laquium Core of Doom just dropped. Every single Pokemon that was there to stop the Laquium begins the episode by terrestrializing, and it's a pretty long sequence as we see the terrestrial animation for each individual Pokemon. They all then float into the air while trying to erase the Laquium by giving power to Terrapagos. However, Spinel has some of the Explorer workers around there, and he has them attack our hero's Pokemon. This isn't good as the Pokemon in the air can't move. Roy, Alt, and Freed bring out Sableye, Lucario, and Charizard respectively to fight back. However, Roy and Alt's Pokemon are too exhausted, and Charizard gets hit by multiple Pokemon at once and gets knocked down. Then, Spinel has Indy and Rubina bring out 2 Electros to use Explosion on the Pokemon. Penny has Sylveon use Reflect to block the explosion, and then use Disarming Voice, but that drains it out of power and knocks it out of terrestrialization, which means now there is no longer enough Terra-type Pokemon to continue. Spinel then tells the Explorer Grunts to attack the remaining Pokemon, however, then all of a sudden, they all get knocked out by Screamy Puff as it comes out of nowhere. Spinel thinks that the rest of the admin, especially Coral, are there to help him and tells them to attack, but instead, Coral and the others say that they don't see the future in Laquium either, and she terrestrializes her Screamtail to help out our heroes. That shocks everyone. That's when Spinel begins going crazy. He says you can't trust anyone, human or Pokemon. He then says Laquium has been spread everywhere because of the strong sphere, but Liko responds by saying that she believes that there will be a time when people realize that Laquium doesn't have to come between Pokemon and people. But Spinel doesn't believe that. He then goes towards the Laquium crystal acting crazy, grabbing it, and that causes it to start absorbing into his skin, slowly, and eventually he goes all the way inside the Laquium in a gnarly scene, and his Umbreon tries to save him, but it cannot. Then, the Laquium core comes out of the ground, and it is a bizarre, sci-fi eye-looking thing with technological straight lines made of crystal all around it. It looks absolutely insane, and it seems to be almost a living thing as it attacks Terrapagos and knocks it out of stellar form. Freed thinks this is like a rejection response. He says that Terrapagos' attempt to erase the Laquium made the core grow stronger as it tried to fight back while rejecting its erasure, and Spinel's tenacity agitated it to go even further, causing it to come to life. Our heroes then try to have their Pokemon attack this thing. Lucario and Sableye try to get close range, but get sent back instantly. So, all of the terrestrial Pokemon try to attack from a distance. However, it then sends out a scream that stops all the terrestrialization and knocks down all the Pokemon at once. All seems lost, as everyone is hurt now, and there is no more terrestrialization. However, Liko is not backing down. She has learned from her journey that as long as they don't give up, a path will open up for them, and that motivates not only them, but every single Pokemon, including the ones that were knocked out or hurt earlier. They all decide to take the Laquium core on. The first bit of the counterattack from our heroes is just attacking the Laquium core while dodging its counterattack. It tries to use the mist, however, that gets blown back by Hurricane. When it attacks in the ground, flying Pokemon counterattack. Eventually, it even turns into this flower-looking thing that's attacking our heroes constantly. As our heroes are trying to stop it, Cap goes in and hits it hard with Volt Tackle. Then, Cap is the one being attacked by this thing when Charizard manages to save it. And that's when Liko realizes something as she sees Charizard taking Cap away. The Laquium core is only focusing on Cap. Despite all the other Pokemon being here, it's focused solely on Cap, which means that this thing isn't really a living being. It just responds to external stimuli. And because of that, our heroes figure that if they can attack one by one, they can attack and dodge while the next person begins to attack to damage it and slowly take care of it. However, they still can't seem to break through, as while it works for a little bit, the Laquium core just keeps recovering over and over again. As our heroes continue to attack it, Dot figures something out. She realizes that the core only attacks back when it's attacked first, and on top of that, it keeps rebuilding its center, where more than likely the main weakness of the core is. So our heroes need to do massive damage to that area. That's not all, however. As Alt attacks just before Dot is done explaining, we see what she was going to say next, which is that once the core takes enough attacks enough times, it builds resistance to it. So, moves that used to do a lot of damage at first do very little later. So they need to figure out a move that they can do massive damage to it all at once in its center. They need maximum firepower, and we end the episode with our heroes all trying to think of a solution to destroy this massive behemoth. This was a really fun episode. I was always wondering, with how many people they had involved in this, how this was gonna work. And while there is a little bit of wonkiness still to it, this episode I think does a great job. At times it can feel a bit filler fillery with a lot of animations playing back to back to back for all the various Pokemon with no real dialogue, especially when they're terrestrializing, but I think that also allows everyone to get their own moment to shine, and it also allows the animation staff to work on some incredible animation cuts, as the back-to-back cuts were pretty simple in execution. So for example, when Cap goes to use Rising Volt Tackle, the animation on it looks unbelievable. Now, the only weird thing about this episode is really the Laquium core coming to life. It makes for a better climax for sure, I'm not complaining about that, but it does feel like it's kind of out of nowhere. I guess they did say it was the alien thing, so maybe you could chalk it up to that. I don't mind it too much. I think I just got used to it because Legends ZA finale did the exact same thing with Ange Floette, and I feel like that's what they're trying to emulate here. They wanted a way to battle against Laqua, but Spinel isn't much of a battle threat, so how do you get around that issue? Well, you just make the Laquium crystals themselves the main threat. And I really like the fact that because of this, they're able to come up with solutions that are unique to non-human entities. Things like the fact that it only attacks when attacked first and it only attacks one at a time. Although as they say that, didn't the Laquium crystal knock all of them out all at once with a singular screen? Whatever, let's just ignore that. But that allows them to come up with different solutions that wouldn't work in a standard battle. I do wonder if Legends ZA never happened, what the original way they were planning on ending this would be, because this feels like promotion for Legends ZA. And with the next episode showing that we'll have some Mega Evolution, that feels more so. Either way, I'm really looking forward to how they're going to end this here. How our heroes are going to come up with a solution, and what's going to happen afterwards. Where they move on from here too. I know there's been a trailer for the next arc, and I want to make a dedicated video for that trailer at a later date. But ending such a massive portion of the anime, the thing that has been the main focus of this for over 135 episodes, is going to be interesting, as the anime, after next episode, is going to be moving on to a next phase. Episode 136 of Pokemon Horizons, titled Stellar Finale, just dropped. The episode begins with Hamber deciding to come down to help our heroes. Diana does as well. They both bring out their Pokemon and begin attacking the core. Their attacks are incredibly powerful here. Even Nemona says, "This is the strength of veteran trainers." Roy then asks Rayquaza to lend him his power. And in a metaphysical way, so does Lucius, who somehow gives his Mega Ring power in order to evolve Rayquaza. Roy sees his Mega Ring shining and Mega evolves his Rayquaza, giving a shiny Mega Rayquaza. Amethyst does the same thing with Zygarde. He asks Zygarde to help him by lending his power, and metaphysically, his grandfather Gibeon helps him. He somehow gets the Zygarde tight as his Mega Ring begins to glow, and we get to see a shiny Mega Zygarde. The two Pokemon then begin to charge their attack. While doing so, the core fights back as it's about to attack the two Pokemon. How? It's not really explained, as we were told it just reacts to stimuli. However, our heroes seize this and have their Pokemon block the attack. Ults Dragonite and frees Charizard from the air for Rayquaza, and Samra and Nemona's Palmont from the ground for Zygarde. We then see Zygarde use Nihil Light as the core tries to defend itself, and it blows through the main protection bit of the core open. Then Mega Rayquaza comes in with Dragon Ascent. Our heroes notice that the core is still trying to protect itself, so Roy has the Skeledirge provide additional firepower support with Torch Song, which engulfs Rayquaza as Rayquaza smashes into the core, and that seems to have finished it, as it's no longer regenerating. Our heroes see this, and Terapagos jumps into action, trying to enter Stellar Form to gather everyone's power. However, the core has one last gasp of defense. It pushes out Laquium Mist that hits all of the nearby hero Pokemon. A consistent theme in this arc has been that bonds are stronger than what Laquium can do. So for the final time, Meowscarada and the other Pokemon break through the Laquium and are ready to go. With that, Terapagos terrestrializes all of our heroes' Pokemon before taking them up to the core, where it surrounds the core as a whole with their power. Spinel is then pushed out of the core. He sees the core disappearing and is horrified. His Umbreon is happy to see him, but Spinel tells his Umbreon that it needs him to fight for him, giving it a broken piece of crystal. Umbreon, after seeing everything that's happened, looks away and declines. However, Spinel destroys the broken shard crystal in front of it, causing the Laquium gas to come out to force it to battle. Because unlike our heroes' Pokemon who are able to break through because of their bonds, Umbreon is not. To prevent it from attacking Terapagos, Liko has her Meowscarada ready to battle. We get an incredible bit of animation for this battle between Spinel's Umbreon and Liko's Meowscarada. Umbreon tries to attack, but Liko is able to counterattack easily both times. Spinel wonders why Laquium isn't working for him, but Liko snaps back at him, repeating that their bonds are stronger than Laquium. Spinel harshly responds, saying bonds aren't real and they don't exist, but Liko responds that they aren't something you can see, but she feels them, and she believes in all the people and the Pokemon that live in the planet. When Spinel asks how she can believe something like that, Liko responds it's because she loves Pokemon. To her, they are her treasure. She then suggests to Spinel that he must love love as Umbreon too, because Umbreon is a happiness evolution. But Spinel rejects this outright. We see a flashback of young Spinel in his bed at night when his Eevee evolves into an Umbreon. However, Spinel has changed since then and fully rejects this framing. Umbreon has one final attack and Meowscarada responds with one final magical leaf. That KOs Umbreon. This provides enough time for Terapagos, and finally, the core is completely gone. It's fully over now. Spinel's ambition is crushed. Even Spinel knows this. Spinel then tries to recall his Umbreon, but now the bonds they used to have is broken as Umbreon slaps away and destroys the Pokeball it was in before running away. Spinel, now with everything lost, including his own partner Pokemon, doesn't know what to do and stumbles and tries to chase after his Umbreon, looking weak and pathetic in the process. Like Sidian says, it's very similar to what happened to Gibeon, and Spinel never learned from it. Hamber then orders all the Explorer folks around to leave, and he himself leaves the premise. The battle has finally been won. As our heroes wait on the brave Olivine to come pick them up, they see that the Pokemon that used to be in Lockwood the first time around are slowly starting to come back. But, like Fried says, the place is wounded. It's going to be a long time before it becomes a paradise again. So because of that, Terapagos talks to Rayquaza and Zygarde before showing Liko that it wants to stay and protect Laqua. Liko is sad to see it go, but happy, because the original goal has also been fulfilled now, which was to help Terapagos. She, along with Roy and Nemethio, say goodbye to their Pokemons as the brave Olivine arrives to pick them up. The remainder of the episode is then wrapping up loose ends. We see the trainer from super early on in this arc that abandoned his Dachshund after losing with a strong sphere, search for it, come back to it, and reunite with it. We see the news talking about how the rising Voltacklers helped save Mount Paracarp along with Mighty G. We see Perrin in YS's magazine about the truth of the strong sphere in the public. We see Exceed Company having to do a press conference where Cervantes has to take ownership of his failures, allowing Spinel to do whatever he wanted to. He apologizes for it and says that he'll have two scientists, Fried and Younger, look into the harmful effects of the strong sphere. They also are collecting all the strong spheres to put them away. And on top of that, we see that Amethio will try to repair his relationship with his father. We see that Sidian and Coral are celebrities to a certain degree, and Kals has gone back to her old village where we see the school that she wanted built being built. We see Diana and Hamber rekindling their relationship from their younger days, and finally we see Spinel's Umbreon going over a fenced wall where we see that Spinel is now in jail for his crimes. Umbreon looks at him before leaving back into the forest, reinforcing the idea that bonds between people and Pokemon, despite everything that happened between Spinel and Umbreon, still remain to a certain degree. The episode ends with us seeing the outside of the brave Olivine as the rising Voltacklers continue their adventure. A really great ending to this arc, and by extension, the main plot of the series. They wrap up as many loose threads as they can and try to do it in a satisfying way. The final battle was more really about vibes than logic. Last episode, we were told that the Laquium core can't actually know what it's doing. It's more like a stimuli that responds and attacks whoever it attacked last. But that's not what happens in this episode. It was actively defending itself with the flower shields and preemptively attacking. It's like they set up everything last episode as a strategy bit, only to go back on it fully just for vibes and cool action. The scriptwriter actually tweeted that she wrote these final episodes until she was burned out, and you can really tell because it becomes very sloppy in the end here. It's not that big of a deal, because if you watch this series weekly as it's intended, you might not catch that, but I can see a lot of people questioning this here in the West when they binge watch it due to the nature of the Netflix episode release schedule here. I was worried about what they were going to do with Spinel and his characterization. Were they going to try to redeem him? Thankfully, no. In fact, despite the fact that we get a flashback to young Spinel, we don't actually learn anything about him. I don't know if that's a positive or a negative. We don't learn why Spinel became obsessed with Laquium or what led him down this path. I talked about this in a video a long time ago, but we don't really even know what his motivation was or his end goal was. Was it just to try to get Laquium everyone in the world and get rich? Was it to try to take over the world? Was it to try to change the world in his image of some sort? I'm not really sure. The story never answers that question. So while Spinel is a great villain in what he's able to execute, ultimately I don't know how I feel about him as a character overall, because we never learn his motivation, which is one of the most important things you need to know about characters. We do get a satisfying ending, with him ending up as pathetic and, unlike Gibeon, getting punished for his actions. Speaking of Gibeon, this is the first episode where I'm realizing they really tried to turn him into a good guy, and I just don't see how you can do that. They did this early on when he left as a character, so I'm not saying this is something new, but as I was watching this episode, they had the ghost of Gibeon give Amethio strength, and I started questioning things. First of all, unlike Rayquaza, which doesn't require a Mega Stone to evolve. I don't understand the logic behind how a Meteo got a Zygarde type at all. It's not like he said he had it. It makes no logical sense. For Rayquaza, at least they'd built up to it by having him eat the meteorite a while back. This feels like a last-minute addition, a corporately mandated thing just to try and promote Legend ZA. And it really shows, because out of everyone in the story, Mega Zygarde coming here feels like it came out of nowhere, even more so than the core itself. Other than that though, I like the ending of the story. It tries to wrap things up in a satisfying way, and I think for the most part, it does a good job. The ending of the arc really pulls it together in terms of people's complaint about whether this is Liko or Roy's show. The answer ends up being yes. Both of them have important moments, both of them are very significant to the plot, and both end up in a dual protagonist role that by the end feels like it works. Overall, this felt like the planned ending of Horizons as we know it. The next arc we're getting, it just feels like it's stalling until the next release of the games, which is pretty far away. And as far as we know, it's going to be a bunch of episodic type segments to promote mobile games and other spin-off games. I could be mistaken. Maybe there will be an overarching story to focus on for this arc as well. But whatever it is, it won't be as long, winding, overarching as this 3-year story about Liko, Terapagos, Laqua, Black Rayquaza, and everyone involved in the story. This was a really fun finale, one that tries to focus more on the world itself than the main characters because it recognizes that the story as a whole has ended. So, I'll ask you guys, what did you think about the ending of the story? What did you guys think about this final episode? What did you think about this arc as a whole? And what do you think about this 3-year story the Horizons went through? Were you satisfied with everything? Let me know all of that in the comments down below. You guys have a wonderful day. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.